status that is fixed. They can come back and change the master plan or change various aspects of it. So his advice is that we can continue with the approach of adopting.
Okay, and doesn't prohibit the matter that Councillor King raised.
Right.
Okay, right, thank you for that advice. The other thing is I'm going to move the recommendation, but I did check a couple of things with the Chief Executive, and if they does the board work? Just in terms of timing, and I thought E, just listening to the questions, needed a bit of clarification, so there's just a couple of changes to E. I checked with the Chief Executive about the timing. It seemed a very tight time frame, and also the new council really will have only just arrived in the building, and I'm not sure that was adequate. And secondly, picking up on the question about funding and getting that very clear, I think is a matter for discussion in the next council, and I didn't think that just implementation plan covered it enough, and I thought it should be a proper funding plan for those ones that may commit the council to funding. So that was just to get some better clarification. I'm happy to move that. Did you have a question?
I was just wondering if I could ask you a question about that funding aspect you've added in there.
Yep.
It's still potentially then an issue in B, where it talks about it as presented in attachment 1, which has already got a funding plan, whereas you're talking about something yet to be developed or finalised.
Yes, I didn't see at all what the funding documents in this Ferrybank development plan is anything other than, because it calls them rough order cost estimates. And in fact, the brief that they were given did ask them to specifically include in this so that, you know, we could have a sense of, because imagine if, for example, hypothetically, imagine if that had come back and said, I don't know, 2 billion, you know what I'm saying? So I didn't see this in this document, anything other than giving information about recommended staging and rough order idea of costs. What I'm thinking about here, listening to the conversation, I think it's appropriate that there's a sort of a more detailed analysis of what it would be, what the publicly funded projects, you know, how that would be funded, you know, what's the plan for that? That's sort of how I saw it. So do you think those words need a little bit more detail?
Well, I just think the word adopt as presented in attachment 1 therefore includes that list, which I take your point in E, it's not necessarily going to be that.
No.
You know, it's going to be some more, there yet to be more work, no problems with that, but it's just B doesn't quite, wouldn't to the public say the same thing. I'd suggest if they're reading that document, that's attachment 1, it's got a, even if it's a broad brush, it's got a funding plan. That's what people will think councils adopt, the word adopt.
Different view. I actually think B's fine because that's kind of how we do it. You know, we've done that heaps of times, but if you think there's an issue with that, and I know Councillor King is going to move an amendment. Councillor Wilson, are you seconding? Oh, sorry, I think you seconded. Oh. Sorry.
That's all right.
Okay, but it's been seconded. But Councillor King, I know you were looking to put an amendment, and are you wishing to still do that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay, what would that be? Did you give the wording to?
Yeah, I
okay. Could you put the amendment up then? Have you got the wording?
So basically, E, in the order of how things would work on the original staff recommendation, E should come before so yeah, E should be moved up because the order's wrong. If you compare that the original staff recommendation. So the first thing that happens is staff report back. And the wording in C, that what we're doing by doing this is we're authorising staff to commence planning and processes and to enable the implementation of the Ferrybank Development Plan. So by voting this in, we're actually authorising staff to commence these processes ahead of having gone to public consultation. And we still don't know what the outcome of the public consultation is. So why are staff rushing ahead? Planning.
They can't go out, of course. Remember, that has to be signed off by the council to, that process has to be signed off by the council.
Yeah, I understand that, but
Yeah.
why are we authorising them to go and do that work when we still haven't gone to the public to ask them what they think?
Okay,
Because we haven't consulted.
okay. So that's why you've changed them around, okay.
But my main point of this is that we should be receiving it. We shouldn't be adopting it at this stage ahead of consultation. And by adopting it ahead of consultation, I do believe that we're preempting the decision. And my advice, contrary to what the Chief Executive has said, is that that would then mean we'd be challenged as to whether we could actually listen to the consultation and people who are presenting with an open mind, or whether a commissioner would be open to be challenged to whether a commissioner would be brought in or not to listen to it instead of this council.
Yeah. All right, so is there a second of Councillor King's motion?
I'll second it pro forma, Your Worship, because it incorporates the point that I've raised.
Okay. Okay, so just going back up to the top one. Chief Executive is saying that council adopt the Ferrybank plan, what conceptual you said, to reinforce
As a conceptual plan.
as a conceptual plan. Mhm. B, council adopt the Ferrybank Development Plan as a conceptual plan as presented. Happy with that, Deputy Mayor?
My apologies, councillors. I did ring our lawyers very quickly during the break, and he suggested that it would make it more robust to acknowledge not only within the document it's conceptual, but also within the recommendation that it's conceptual, and that's what the adjustment there is achieving.
Your Worship, I just have a question to the CE, just a clarification on that. Is there any, we've never used the word conceptual in any of the other plans that we've adopted?
I've never been asked the question that Councillor King's asked me previously either, Councillor O'Leary.
Does that have ramifications on the other plans we've
No,
adopted?
it doesn't. This is just added. No, it doesn't.
This is a development plan. It has no legal status because, you know, it's not convened under any legislation. It is reasonably detailed. So what's the conceptual bit in there for?
It's just a recommendation. As I mentioned, our advisors commented that as long as the plan itself was flavoured in a conceptual way that provided vision and conceptual outline for the Ferrybank development, we're satisfied with that. I just received a text suggesting that then to reinforce that, to note that as a conceptual plan within the recommendation, just reinforces that. And that was the reason for that.
Yes, that's okay with you? Sorry?
Sorry?
Are you okay about that change?
Yes, I am.
Yes, right. You need another as after plan.
The other plan, the second plan,
Second plan,
As
yeah.
presented.
not the conceptual plan, the second plan.
Sorry.
Plan, boss, the plan.
Sorry.
Okay. All right, so I think we're clear, and councillor King sort of explained what his thinking behind his amendment, so I think everyone's clear.
Could I have F included on my amendment, please?
Okay. All right. So we'll do them together then. Is it okay with everyone? Amendment, motion, we'll just speak once. People happy with that? Okay.
Just the F should be an E there, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
Otherwise someone will think someone's been, well, otherwise it looks like something's been pulled out of it or something. Someone thinks there's a mistake being made.
Okay, I'll speak in support of the motion. Until this, we got down to the level of detail of wording, I don't think it adds anything to it. At the end of the day, what we are doing today is signing off on a piece of work that is an integral part of the river plan. It is a major project in the river plan, and the realisation of the content of the ferry bank plan is the thing that will make a profound transformation of this city. We dispatched Megan and John and their team to go away and to come back with that, and this is what they've done, and I think it's a fantastic plan. I know they've worked very hard and they've engaged with an immense number of people in the community to get it to where it is. It's fantastic. I do think that it's got all the elements that the public of Hamilton have been looking for, which is a combination of public space, commercial activity, hospitality, entertainment, but most importantly, actually able to get up close and personal with the river and see it, which actually was the number one thing people for many, many years have said. You'll no longer have to walk across a bridge to see it, you better go down there and enjoy it. And that's exactly what we wanted. I think, councillors, if you support this motion, what you are saying publicly is that you stand behind the river plan and support it, and that you support the implementation of the Ferrybank development plan. That's what, to me, supporting this motion is all about, standing up and saying that. And with that, of course, comes support for what the journey will be, which is a journey to work with partners, funding partners, the commercial and private sector, and with the community on behalf of, the council on behalf of the community to fund the things that need to be funded to deliver this plan. Otherwise, it will be reduced to what many others before it have been, which is the bottom drawer. And I don't think there is anyone in Hamilton who actually wants that. I think people have spoken clearly for some time that they want us to do this. So it's been a long journey with the river plan, but I do want to thank those people involved, and there's lots behind the scenes because they've done an awful lot of work. And I think this is a fantastic outcome, and I'm very proud to move the motion and support it. Okay, who's going to speak next? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. I was happy to second this resolution. It's been one of the most interesting project developments in my time on council, because what's been remarkable has been the way in which the public has embraced the idea. And that's because in the past there have been so many ideas around the river that have never actually got off the ground. And I will leave just one parting few words, and that is we are being careful with ratepayers' money.
Okay. Okay, who else would like to speak? Anyone else? Councillor Mallett.
I can't support this plan. As I said when I was speaking to the consultants, we were talking about peak cafe, peak restaurant, peak event hosting. I don't think the demarcation about where the funding comes from is clear at all, and the level of risk that's involved in this project, it's huge. The level of risk is that it will fall back on the ratepayer. The private sector funders, not a single one has been identified. I just cannot see, and look, I'm going to sound like a bloody spoil sport. But this is a fantastic project, but it's just not something that the council is capable of doing. The risk inherent in it is immense. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. This is the V8s and Claudelands wrapped up in one, to be honest, in terms of the size of the thing. And the city just is not capable, I don't think, of managing this project, managing it economically, and managing it right through to fruition, because I cannot see the public sector, the private sector funding, and there's nothing in here that has given me any confidence in today's presentation that there will be demand for the private sector funding. There will be, that's the wrong way around, that the private sector will be willing to come on board, because I can't see any much opportunity for profit for the private sector in this, and they won't get invested with the big money we're after unless they can see a clear avenue for them to make a profit. So I can't see this thing as sustainable or economically viable.
Okay, anyone else wish to speak? Councillor King?
I believe that the recommendations from management are preempting a decision by asking us to adopt the report rather than receive the report. I believe that we need to wait until after the consultation period, which does need to go, we do need to go back out to the public on this, on things like reversing, or on all sorts of areas, period before making such bold statements and adopting the report. We need to be open-minded with possible submissions from the public on a ferry bank plan before any decisions are made. And I don't see how you can be open-minded if you've already adopted the report instead of receiving the report. So on that issue, I urge you to support the amendment, and I will be following this through when it does come back up on this issue, on adopting rather than receiving, and having an open mind and having preempted in our decision making.
Councillor McPherson.
I haven't finished, Your Honour.
Sorry.
Your Worship, thank you. I'm not against the ferry bank being developed as a premium park. But if Auckland Council came to us or went to the pub, had a meeting today, and it was floated that they were going to put an apartment block, a 5-storey high apartment block with 2 stories under the ground with parking, with other multiple commercial operations on, say, Auckland Domain or Albert Park, there'd be a national outcry. And yet we're developing our probably most prime piece of park and we're just letting it go through. I struggle with it. Reserve land is supposed to be used for community use, not for profit. Things that everybody can go to, an eyesight, no problem, a tourism centre, a theatre, but not things that people privately profit off or that people privately have ownership over where other people can't enjoy it. Further, by moving the commercial aspect of what we're proposing here down into the Ferrybank area, we're going to dilute the CBD further, and the CBD landowners and property business owners will be in direct competition with buildings that the council will have a stake in. As I say, what I'm opposed to is a commercialisation of the reserve land, and our council is supposed to be a guardian, and you people sitting around this table are supposed to be a guardian of that reserve land. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McPherson.
Thank you. I'm going to support the amendment, although I'd say at the start that I'm not quite in the same place as Councillors Mallett or King on this. I see a large amount of good in the concept here. I think it's essentially right. I think there are ways that you can look at sharing commercial and public use in public spaces. I don't think it's an automatic no-no. I think it's something you have to be very careful over, though. I have a problem, though, a real problem with the word adopt. I think that's too soon. I think that's committing an incoming council when it's not necessary yet to commit them. There's still quite a bit more work that staff have openly said they need to do, and we all know needs to be done before we can get round to signing any contracts for construction works. I think that the proper wording now would be to receive the report, to thank the people who are doing it, to ask staff to do more work and bring back an implementation plan. And I don't think that's actually against anything that the movers are saying. The problem with the word adopt is that there's a whole lot of baggage tied to that. The baggage is a number of the details, perhaps all the details in the booklet we've been given, including that list of finances. I've seen too many times on council when initial reports have come around this table over the recent years, and staff and the public to a certain extent have assumed that an initial tick is giving them carte blanche to go off and do a whole lot of work and make a whole lot of plans, raise money and paint us into a corner basically. And I'm concerned that we're doing that a little bit early. At some stage we have to do that, but this isn't the time, I don't think, in the second to last meeting of an outgoing council to do that. I think good work's been done to get us to this stage. We don't need to ram it through, and I think the word adopt is an element of that. I think additionally, what's happened with Founders Theatre has added a spanner in the works financially for us, and we need to have a really careful look early in the term of an incoming council, whoever's on it, as to what the priorities are, because I don't think we can do years 1 to 3 and Founders Theatre in the timescale we were talking about. I don't think the city's finances will bear that in quite that order and quite that compressed a time frame. So, but I think the some people certainly will be holding that budget that we've got, the broad picture budget we've got in here, against us to try and elevate that unnecessarily up the list. Personally, I think replacement of Founders might need to come before any of this stuff. And if it's a matter of not being able to do two at once, then we will certainly have a problem and we will have painted ourselves into a corner by adopting this at this stage. So that's why I'm supporting the amendment.
Councillor Pascoe?
Yes, thank you. I'm supporting the motion, and I'm doing this on the basis that although I wasn't involved in the River Plan Subcommittee, the first meetings I went to when it was released, and there were a number of them, including one cold afternoon on the bridge, where residents have been very, very positive about the River Plan and saying, well, just get on with it and do it. Now, I'm sure that there will be some residents out there who might think otherwise, but they have yet to surface and say that. I think this area, this part of the River Plan is the jewel in the crown, and I think as a council we have to manage it very, very carefully going forward in terms of how we might involve the private sector as well as the philanthropic sector. I think there's an opportunity for us to ensure that we get the kind of buildings and the aesthetics on this park while we still own it, so that we have some control over what's happening. I don't see the word adopt means that we're committed formally, and I see some links here between, or some similarities here between the funding model that we've used to finish the Hamilton Gardens, and I think if you look at the figures, they almost work out the same, 1/3 and 2/3, although we're looking at this over a much, much longer period than the completion of the gardens. I think also the fact that we're adopting the plan sends a message to the marketplace that council, while not legally committed to fund it, is in fact saying to the sector out there that we are really interested in doing this, and that might bring some of those philanthropic funds as well as the private sector forward to sit at the table with us and say this is what we think we can do as part of our contribution. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I intend to support the motion. I was just reflecting here just for a few minutes that with the grace of God I'll be 65 by the time this partnership approach has reached stage 3. and I can visualise hopefully walking down and enjoying this part of the riverbank with my grandchildren. And I think when I reflect 3 and 6 years ago at an election, one of the few things you and I agreed upon was the importance of this river plan. And in fact, I think it wasn't just you and I agreed upon it. I think it was actually a majority of the city. And I think the ratepayers have simply been saying, we've been waiting for 100 years for you to have the courage of your convictions. I find it absolutely fascinating. I'm no expert or philosopher in human behaviour, but I have begun to believe there are 3 types of people, and they are the doers. Then there are those who do nothing and absolutely say nothing, and then there are those who are the critics. And I'm fascinated come election time. Actually, there are more I do nothing and say nothing. I hedge my bet. I keep my head low on below the line, just in case if a position puts me in a challenging position when it comes to an election time. And then there's the others that sit on the other side and go, well, actually, I need a bit of headline. I need to say this is not a good idea. I need to say this is financially irresponsible and position myself so I dominate the front page of the newspaper. Well, the tragedy here is this cause is too important for politics. This is far too important for politics. This makes sense. It's responsible, and its time is now. And for those who put forward this argument that we must be mindful and concerned about the issue of reserved status, listen, we as local government put in things like reserved status on behalf of the community. And when the community says, actually, could we change that and do this with that and do that with that? Our job is to react. Our job is to mould to their wishes. And I think that's what they're telling us here. This is a good plan. It makes sense. It's responsible. We can do it. Support it. Stop politicking and get behind it. Because I intend to vote for the motion, and I hope the rest of you do too.
Okay. Councillor Leary?
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to start by saying how much I'm going to miss Councillor Wilson sitting in this chamber. I love listening to you. Genuinely, I think you're an amazing speaker. When I agree with you, no, even when I don't agree with you, I think you are a wonderful speaker, Councillor, and I'm going to miss listening to you. I'm fully supportive of the motion. I have always supported this vision right from the start, and I was honoured to be part of the working group. I'm absolutely thrilled that in some very small way I have played a part in something that is going to be there for generations to come. And Councillor Wilson's right, people have been waiting for 100 years for this. We need to get on with it. I think that anyone that votes against any part of the river plan is completely out of touch with what Hamilton, the majority of Hamilton people want. So I urge you strongly to play also such a small part in such an amazing vision for the city, and be part of history for generations and generations to come.
Right, any other speakers? Councillor Gallagher?
Yes, I just want to say that in a democratic chamber I fully respect Councillor King and McPherson for their amendment. I won't be supporting it, but I do understand that they have concerns around some process issues, and I think personally the word there is as a conceptual plan. Obviously it is in my view, a very exciting concept, but at any stage of the 15-year journey prior to Councillor Wilson returning with his grandchildren at age 65, I'll be a little older, there will be lots of checks and balances along the way.
And for example, let me take the proposed apartment block next to the Celebrating Age Centre. I'm not going to die in the ditch on that. I'll be listening to a business case, I'll be listening to public submission process, and I will be very much tuning into my community on that issue. I don't think whether or not that particular bit goes ahead, for example, upends the total ferry bank plan concept at all. No, it doesn't. It's a series of building blocks, and only time will tell when Councillor Wilson returns whether everything on the plan is there, or whether there are some bits that have changed because new councils along the way have decided to make amendments along the way. Also, very clearly, a new council actually still has the power, obviously, to freeze, do nothing, whatever. I hope that doesn't happen, personally, and clearly there's nothing that we do today that ties the hands of an incoming council. I do want to make a couple of reflections, however, and I think there are one or two sort of jokers in the pack, and I'll be supporting obviously the resolution. One is when we hear back around the Founders Theatre, obviously in terms of funding and finance, but also potential location, and obviously we will of course be in the heart of that particular project as well. So I think that's sitting there on the horizon. The Deputy Mayor, and please take this in the spirit as intended, seconded this motion, and I think the Deputy Mayor reflects the journey that a number of councillors have taken, because if you recall, the Deputy Mayor initially, when the Mayor introduced this, was a bit sceptical, but he has been convinced, as many in this community have been convinced, by the very good work and the building blocks have been put. He suddenly sees, as I do, that this is no longer just going to be another doorstop in terms of the previous reports that have been published over the years, sadly, that suddenly we are on the cusp of something absolutely being done and absolutely happening. I would tend to liken this debate today perhaps to early discussions around the conversion of the Hamilton City rubbish tip, which was located on the fringes of Cobham Drive. The great former mayors, councillors, Rogers, Rod Braithwaite, Ross Jensen, Jimmy Baird, etc., and I don't know if they really imagined that the vote to start converting the tip into a park would deliver us the amazingly iconic gardens. And dare I say it, it's really easy to back a winner, isn't it? And I acknowledge all the wonderful funding that's coming in for the Hamilton Gardens, because people see something in front of them, they see a concept, they enjoy it, they experience it. I think potentially this, when Councillor Wilson brings his grandkids back, seriously, will be a different version of Hamilton Gardens. This will be the big attractor when people come down from Auckland on the commuter train and spend a day in Hamilton. And the commuter train will be there by then, trust me, I know that. And that commuter train will drop them off, and they'll have a cup of tea and coffee and spend the day and maybe do an overnight stay, enjoy all that we have to offer. But the way in which people perceive Hamilton, I think, by then will have also have fundamentally changed. And in terms of that perception, I do believe that this river plan in 15 years, if this goes roughly to plan, will have a huge role in that. I just want to make a final comment. In the past, we've talked about neglecting the river, turning our back on the river. I've reflected on that, and I perhaps apologise to previous planners, generations, because if you look over the last 15, 20 years, actually, this council has spent quite a lot on the river precinct throughout, and you look at the huge, if you walk up and down that river, there's been a lot done on it, and I think we've got to acknowledge previous councils and staff for doing that. This now, I think if we can achieve this, becomes absolutely the icing on the cake of a journey that happened many, many years ago. I, of course, always have an open mind. And I, of course, will exercise an open mind throughout the whole process when we go stage by stage. And my open mind makes me very excited about this concept plan and about the journey we're about to embark on.
Any other speakers? No? Okay, so are we going to vote on the amendment first, which is the one down below? The King McPherson amendment? Yes, we're just going to... We can all see that, eh? Right. Okay, so you raise your hands if you support the amendment. Raise your hands.
Those for the amendment, Councillors King, McPherson and Green.
Those against the amendment?
Her Worship the Mayor Hardacre, Councillors Chesterman, Young, Gallagher, Pascoe, O'Leary, Mallet, Tooman and Wilson. The amendment is declared lost.
Right, we're looking at the motion now. We're now going to vote on the motion. Okay, if you're in favour of the motion, raise your hand.
Those for the motion, Her Worship the Mayor Hardacre, Councillors Chesterman, Young, Gallagher, Pascoe, O'Leary, McPherson, Green, Tooman and Wilson.
Those against?
Those against are Councillors King and Mallet. The motion is carried.
Okay, so thank you, Megan and John, and all the rest of the team too for coming along today, and Antonis, I think it's gone. Thank you very much for all your work and for delivering this to us, and I'm sure that we will be seeing you in the future as more and more people want to talk to you about the plan. So thank you very much, and thank you, Jake, for your work, because I know you've lived and breathed it. And I think also in their absence we will also acknowledge the evaluation panel who have been people outside Hamilton who have given a lot of feedback and help to the group, so I want to acknowledge them as well. Thanks very much. So hopefully I think you might just make your Tonkin Taylor event, right? I think it starts at 4:30. Yeah, good luck with that. None of us will be at that. Okay, so the next item's item 7, page 9. This is a civil defence contract.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just make a couple of very brief comments, because I think the report is quite clear and succinct. Pleased to present to Council a very comprehensive contract for the delivery of our civil defence and emergency management activity through the Waikato Regional Council, through the Group Civil Defence Office. There are three elements to this report. Firstly is the provision of the Civil Defence Emergency Management Service, noting of course that Hamilton City Council continues to retain the ultimate responsibility for civil defence emergency management, and staff from the organisation will be required for exercises and certainly if there's a declared event. Secondly, the report is also covering the location of our emergency operations centre. Currently it's in the facility down the corridor here towards the elevators. That will be located in a new building along with the staff who provide the service to be currently under construction on the old Food Town site in Hamilton Hembry Street. So that's going to be in a building constructed at the highest level of standards in terms of earthquake, to operate post-earthquakes. And thirdly, the report also covers the relocation of the city safety staff, particularly the camera staff, into that same facility once it's constructed, so that we have not only the emergency management teams located there, the operations centre, but also the camera network and of course the very important information that provides through into a civil defence context. So, Your Worship, final comment I would just make is that this report and this contract has been modelled off other successful partnerships, and if I look locally, Waikato District Council have been operating this for 2 years, very successfully. And in addition, representatives from the Ministry of Civil Defence and Emergency Management in Wellington, but also representatives from the Police, Fire and Ambulance and District Health Board have all strongly endorsed this proposal, and most recently that was reinforced at the Civil Defence meeting last week.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Got councillor Mallett.
Thanks, Blair. I've just got a bit confused on paragraph 4. As reported, CDEM subcommittee, blah, 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 the Waikato CDEM group. What's GEMO?
Yeah, apologies, lots of acronyms.
Yeah.
Group Emergency Management Office. So this is a group of professional staff who are employed by the Waikato Regional Council, but actually operate under the guidance of a joint committee, of which Councillor Tooman is a member of, and they are responsible for delivering, under legislation, the civil defence operations across the Waikato region. And it is that entity, which obviously is...
Group Emergency Management Organisation. Office. Okay. And the second one, your recommendation D, I just found it really hard to follow what that was saying. Is it supposed to say the annual cost of the service level agreement will be funded from 1, the existing budget, 2, lease of city safe accommodation, and 3, adjustments to be found? Is that what it means?
Correct.
Okay. I just couldn't follow it the way it was written.
Yes, that's
Can,
correct.
I wonder if when it gets put up, would you mind if those
Happy for that.
changes are made?
Happy
Thank
for
you.
Councillor Pascoe.
Yes, thanks. Thanks, Your Worship. I've got a number of questions. The shared service with Waikato Regional Council, does that include other councils in that same shared service arrangement, or partnership as you referred to earlier on?
So this contract here would be specifically between ourselves and the Waikato Regional Council, who administer the Group Emergency Management Office. If I just briefly talk about the Group Emergency Management Office, its operations are funded by a targeted rate levied by the Waikato Regional Council. So the staff employed by that office and managed by a manager, they are accountable and deliver their services under the guidance of the Joint Committee, funded by a targeted rate across the entire region. This contract is then specifically with the Regional Council on behalf of the Group Emergency Management Office, specifically for additional staff to be employed to deliver Hamilton's requirements. But of course it leverages off the economies of scale and the benefits of utilising the existing group arrangements, group office.
So why isn't it one big shared service, you know, like a LAS type arrangement, rather than being separately sort of siloed, if you like?
The legislation requires that each council is specifically responsible for their own emergency management response and provision, and each council has determined how they wish to do that. So across the country, in the Wellington area, for example, the councils in Wellington have all got together and deliver it in a shared arrangement. The Waikato District Council 2 years ago opted to engage, as we are through this report, to do the same thing. If you look across the Waikato region, Thames Valley, Hauraki and Manamanapiako work together. So there are different models.
So they've got one partnership with the Waikato Regional Council?
No, they've one partnership themselves. They've staffed it themselves.
Okay.
We have, in this report, looked at our various options and deemed that given the group office is located in Hamilton, there is a lot of duplication. It's a far better proposition for us to leverage off their location.
I certainly read that through. I just wondered if there was a bigger picture there. Moving to Genesis as opposed to the HCC building, which I saw the comments there about the standard of the building. Presumably that's going to cost us more. That'll be A-grade space, won't it? Once the new Genesis building's opened, as opposed to I don't know how we categorise our building, but certainly it would not be A-grade.
No, look, I think there is an additional cost to that, but it is the highest level of accommodation. And if you look at the guidance from the government, and particularly around building standards for facilities which house these, their requirement is for an instant level 4 quality building. This is that level. It's the first of that type in Hamilton to be constructed.
Okay, so how does the shared service get reported back to HCC? I mean, will there be a contract in place that will set out, like a statement of intent that we have with the CCO? Is that?
There will be a work program agreed, and I'll let Calvin speak to that, but he will be the manager of that work program.
I'll be responsible for reporting back on the performance of that. It's a negotiated service level and program of work which we agree, which they are going to deliver on behalf of Hamilton City Council. They're responsible for that. I have the responsibility for ensuring that, for example, that our staff are trained, that our staff go to training, our staff are able to mobilise in the event of a major incident, and so there are parts for both parties in that to adhere to. That's backed up by regular ongoing meetings between regional council and my general manager, and then yearly meetings between the regional controller and the CEO.
Okay. So how does the reporting back go? Is it back to council?
So if we had the same structures we have now, I would imagine that there would be, as we currently have quarterly reports to Councillor Toonman's subcommittee, there would be the same. Yes. Nothing would change there.
Okay, okay. So if we move to the Genesis building, we've presumably got some stranded overheads here, haven't we, in terms of the space that's taken in here that will become empty?
That's correct.
So have we funded that into the budget too, that we will have space that presumably gets allocated across the rest of the organisation, or?
Correct. The cost of that space currently is quite low to civil defence, but yes, it is a stranded cost.
Do you think we should have had a budget for this in terms of, or is that somewhere else? I mean, obviously it's somewhere else in our annual plan, but whether a budget for this giving us a bit of an indicator as to what it is costing and what it's likely to cost with the changes and with contracting with Waikato Regional Council?
I mean, obviously we have a budget of 265,000 as reported. This is moving council to a higher level of service to meet I guess the gaps and the matters identified in the review audit. The expectations on civil defence have lifted and are lifting. There is a new group plan which is about to be presented to the Joint Committee for final adoption that lifts the standards higher again. In a perfect world, we would have had the appropriate level of budget to resource us to the level required, but we don't.
Thank you.
I just want to pick up on a couple of things then. The police sit where the cameras are. You know, there's a police officer there, isn't there, where the cameras are in the transport building at the moment?
No.
Or they come and go?
They come and go. They used to be the police beat base.
But they don't. They're not based there. Right, okay. Secondly, so what sort of group or organisation would we lease that space out to in the transport centre? Because it's
Waikato Regional,
like it's pokey and horrible.
Waikato Regional Council have wished to take up that space, and that's currently being
For what?
for some services they wish to deliver.
The Waikato Regional Council services in the city.
They currently already lease a reasonable portion of that building.
Is that for like the bus services?
Correct.
You mean
Correct,
to
yes.
do with the buses?
Yes. Correct. So
Okay,
those negotiations are an advanced stage.
Right, I was just thinking, what on earth would that be? But
Yeah.
I've contextualised it now. Just on the reporting, when we come to move the recommendation, I do think we should include in a requirement for quarterly reporting because, you know, there's no certainty about what the reporting framework may be like in the future, but I think it is important that there is quarterly reporting because it's not like our other joint services where we sort of have, you know, LAS or we have a regional report or we have the CCO subcommittee. You know, there's likely to be less visibility and if there's no structure to support that, then I think that should be added in.
So
right?
just to clarify, quarterly reporting back to a committee of council?
Well, no, back to the council.
Yes.
They could delegate it to a committee.
Yes, sure.
And that
Happy
would be
with
on the performance and delivery of the business plan. You talked about the annual business plan.
Yes.
So who signs off on the annual business plan?
It's developed by management. It's usually quite an operational matter, and it would be provided as information to as we have in the past, to the CDM subcommittee.
So that could come through as this quarterly report. And the reason I raise that is because my strong recollection when there was a catastrophic event in Christchurch was that operational plans were found wanting.
Correct.
That there were major issues at the operational level, and in fact, who fronted the media?
Yes.
Who fronted the public? Elected people. Yep.
I think the level of assurance I can give council is that this contract has an annual audit component to it,
Yes.
and that audit is conducted by the ministry.
Yes.
So through that, immediately there's rigour in terms of auditing.
And that has
gaps.
to come back to the council
Correct.
as well for
That's correct.
oversight,
Yes.
to make sure that, you know, because we've had, when I first arrived here, that report, you know, gave an indication we weren't in a fit state at that time.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Gallagher, did you have some questions?
I just want to ask the chair of our city committee, Councillor Leo, you may contribute to the debate, but may I ask through the chair to you, what's your own perspective of this recommendation?
I believe what's happened, of course, is civil defence has moved very quickly in, say, the last 2 to 3 years. And it's probably as a result of the Christchurch earthquake. And I guarantee that those persons in the middle of Italy never thought that they would be in this situation today, last night. And just before we had the incident whereby Havelock North, where our acting general manager infrastructure there gave us a briefing earlier on. These are the sort of things I think, and as the city grows, I think you've got to think of what keeps you awake at night. And one of the things I'm always very concerned about, of course, is when I look as to the city here, where we've got a huge amount of volatile sort of liquids travelling through here with LPG tankers and all those sort of things, you know. We only really need an incident like that, and this will actually effectively split the city in half. I think there's safety in numbers as well, and when I look at the group who are over at the regional council, they are professionals in their field, there's no two ways about that, and they breathe and live civil defence. Some people will probably find it fairly boring sort of stuff, but these guys love this stuff. And I think what it is, of course, is if we can tack on to their coattails, I think the city's going to be in a far better space than it is at the present time. So I would definitely recommend that we go with the amalgamation, shall we say, of Hamilton City along with the region, as well as Waikato District Council.
So I think a question through the chair I'd ask to you and to our staff is obviously the intersection with the political wing in terms of the appropriate reporting processes and accountability. Can we just clarify exactly how that would happen again? I know it's been raised before. Just go back to that piece, if you would. And Leah may want to add to that. I don't know.
So I think I've got that written down. Do you want to put that up? So that you
Sorry?
can see? Do you want to put that up so that you can see?
Well, we're useful if we could just. All I want to see is just, okay, I understand we're moving, if you like, we're contracting to a regional entity, get that, but I'm just looking at the intersection in terms of our political oversight, in terms of our committee structure and keeping the not only the finances accountable, but obviously the actual actions and
if it gives you a level of assurance, councillors, I can say that the manager of the group office is equally looking for that assurance that council, through Kelvin, will deliver our end of the obligations. And this is by no means council just saying, there you go, group, you now run our civil defence. It's actually, we are engaging them to provide the expertise and the staff and the ability to be located together. But they will be coming and talking to Kelvin regularly around exercises, preparation, ensuring the organisation understands its obligations, ensuring you as elected members know what you need to do. And I think the beauty of this arrangement is that every single day, the staff who will work on civil defence for Hamilton will be sitting alongside the staff who work on civil defence for the group, that if anything happens or even an inkling of an event is starting to a crisis, the group staff are there watching, supporting, advising, and that's a very, very comforting position to be in for the city.
So that'd be to the committee that Councillor Leo currently chairs, or its successor, whatever our governance structure is. You'd be looking at a regular report line.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
I'm happy to move the motion with the addition of an E, which says that staff will provide will report quarterly to Hamilton City Council on the performance and delivery of the business plan. That's sufficient?
Yes.
Delivery of the business plan.
Probably deliver the work plan, Your Worship.
Oh, work plan, okay. Delivery of the work plan.
Yeah. And through the chair, I'd like to ask that question to Councillor Toomey in terms of, the current structure and reporting and oversight. Does that sort of would that sit with you in terms of your...
I think it's great benefit actually to maintain this Civil Defence Emergency Management Group, which we have here in the city, which is made up of Councillor McPherson, myself and Councillor O'Leary.
I think Councillor Tooman, the group would actually take a lot of comfort from me as well. Certainly I think that they would be very pleased to be able to come along and actually talk directly to elected members, and that would give them a higher level of comfort that it's not just staff, that there's huge buy-in politically. So I think they'll take a lot of comfort from that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this? Okay, I'll move that. Seconded by councillor Tooman. Are you seconding that? Yeah, okay. Did you have a question? No. All right, so is there any debate on this? Yes, councillor Mallett.
This is a really secure building, isn't it?
The building they'll be going to the, what's called an IL4 building, so it's going to be constructed to the highest level.
Okay.
So it's designed, councillor Mallett, if there is a significant earthquake, not only will it withstand the earthquake, it will be able to operate post the earthquake. And Kelvin.
Do councillors get priority? Where's the door?
Unit managers will have priority.
All right, thank you.
But just on that purpose, though, nationally there is a move for all emergency management groups to ultimately move to IL4 rated buildings, and I think we will be the 16th or the 17th council across the country to move into an IL4 building.
Okay, good. All right, those in favour of this, raise your hands. Any against? No, carried by everyone. Thank you very much. We're in safe. Right, easement for pedestrian underpass, page 15, item 8.
Thank you and good afternoon. If I could take the report as being read, but just briefly, this paper seeks council resolution for an easement to NZTEA over a very small part of the Hamilton Gardens land that will be used in the construction of a pedestrian underpass that will link Sillery Street with Hamilton Gardens. All costs for the construction of the underpass and structural maintenance will be the responsibility of NZTEA. The underpass will improve pedestrian safety, provide disabled access to the gardens, a route for bikers to cross Cobham Drive, and provide linkages between other nearby areas of the city, such as the hospital. So the recommendations in the paper, the recommendations to council, cover the administrative steps that are necessary to complete the easement actions.
Okay, councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of questions. When it's finished, is the underpass owned by the council or NZTA? Hi, Jason.
Just through the chair, we have an MOU in place with NZTA.
Yep.
So structurally, NZTA will be responsible for those elements of the underpass, and then we maintain do the routine maintenance. So it's still their asset, but we've got an agreement in place where we take care of some of the maintenance.
Okay, so we don't own it then. It's still NZTA. It's on NZTA Road.
Correct.
It's still owned by NZTA after it's finished.
Yep.
So is that normal that we would pay maintenance? I mean, we don't, as I understand it, we don't pay the maintenance on Cobham Drive. That's paid by NZTA.
Yeah, we do have a funding agreement in place. State highways within urban areas.
Yep.
We pick up, we carry out some of the routine maintenance, of which we get subsidy on some of that.
Okay. So we end up paying for some of that maintenance on state roads within an urban area, do we?
Yes, there are rules around that. And
So this is fitting into that same model, is it, in terms of what the council's ongoing costs are?
It does, yes.
In terms of maintenance? Okay.
Okay.
And so have we got any costs that Hamilton City will have to bear in terms of the entrance and exit? You know, presumably there's some land that we own at one end of it and some land that we own at the other. Do we have any costs? And obviously there's going to be some pathways that lead into it, which may be on land, our land, and certainly a pathway when it gets to the gardens, I assume. Are we, is that our cost, or is that part of NZTA to link the pathways to the underpass?
So it's to do the physical works. That's all part of the capital project that will be delivered by NZTA.
Yep.
And then when it goes into, I suppose, business as usual, maintenance of those.
Yeah, I understand that. But what about the path when you get across to Hamilton Gardens?
Yes.
I imagine, looking at the map, there's just a bit of lawn over there.
Okay.
So there'll be a need for a pathway to connect it to the car park or to the Rogers Rose Garden.
The latest update on that is, as part of the capital works, NZTA will fund the extension of a footpath to the car park at Hamilton Gardens.
And the same on the city side, which is presumably there'll be an access way from the footpath, I presume.
Yeah, look, on Sillery Street you're talking about?
yeah.
So, yeah, that will become more of a shared space, so vehicles will still be able to access the properties there. But it will also be used by pedestrian cyclists as part of that route.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Mallard?
Thank you. On the map on page 19, the red square, that's presumably the place where you arrive.
That's
What will
correct.
that be?
So the, unfortunately, the key didn't come out on the
No.
photocopy. So yes, the red area is the area where the underpass exits. And that area falls away from Cobham Drive. So it's not a long entry into the underpass, as you can see from the Sillery Street side. So that is, opens out into an open area. Then there is a pathway that links with the existing Cobham.
Sorry, Ken, so for someone in a wheelchair, I think it talks about wheelchairs, doesn't it? Okay, so someone in a wheelchair coming down there would be it'll be a very slight, and that's helped because that side's lower than the
Sillery Street side.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's going to rise up onto the footpath on the Cobham Drive, and to the east of the red square, there is stairs as a, able-bodied easy access.
Sounds like Gremlin.
So can you just explain, because, I think the imagery could have been better. So they go through the underpass and get to the red bit, which is the subject of this report, and then what is going to happen? A pathway to join up to the footpath, or a pathway to go down to the car park?
So both. So
Both.
they'll be
So
connecting back to the footpath, existing footpath on Cobham Drive that you can see there now.
Yep.
And then there will be another pathway
Yep.
that will lead down to the car park
Right.
in Hamilton
And
Gardens.
are they going to build that at the same time?
Yes, that's right. And it will be compliant to allow people, I suppose, in wheelchairs, mobility scooters, to be able to access that as well.
Right, and it will be to the standard and to the expectation of Hamilton Gardens, not, an engineered footpath, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, yes. NZTA, we've been supporting NZTA with, I suppose, facilitating those discussions with Hamilton Garden staff.
Okay.
So their views have been taken into account.
Okay, good. Right. Councillor McPherson.
Thanks. This is fast work. It's only been on the agenda since 1999. Sorry, yeah, 1999, when I first saw it on the agenda. And without wanting to add another 17 years to it, is the decision we made at the recent meeting to go ahead with the grade separated crossing just to the east of this at where the Wairere Drive is going to meet Cobham Drive, and where it's also going to include pedestrian facilities. Is that going to make a difference to NZTA's view here? Because their original proposition was for one crossing, and there was a big, multi-year argument about where that should take place. Now we've just approved to the east. Are we still going to get this, or is this sort of written in total isolation from that last decision?
No, look, so I meet with NZTA staff on a regular basis, and they've confirmed at our last meeting that the funding has now been approved for this project, and it's getting delivered this financial year.
And it's not going to affect the pedestrian part of the other one, with footpaths, I believe, on both sides of that overbridge?
So you're talking about
the grade separated crossing at Wairere Drive?
No, I don't believe so, and I haven't had that specific discussion, but nothing that alludes to this here affecting decisions at the other site.
Great, thanks.
Okay, yes, Councillor Gallagher.
Yeah, I should know, but I don't assume you've talked to Buckingham Palace, but it's Her Majesty the Queen. I don't know if she has a view or you'll sort her views as to if she would be, if she's requested this, or her office has requested it. But can you just tell me, and forgive me, I don't have the legal expertise, albeit I was a legislator, but I just want to know the difference between the word Crown and Her Majesty the Queen.
I think we should consult her.
Well, if she was, then I certainly am very grateful for the time that she spent on this issue, and would hope that we would thank
It's
her office.
1979 or 99 or whenever.
Probably 99 it was then, yeah. So just what's the terminology here?
Well, the use of the terminologies means the Crown both, in both instances. So the government.
I wonder if the Crown would be, I mean, it's just maybe, I may be being pedantic, it would seem to be on an underpass, I think probably something a bit more fitting Her Majesty the Queen. If it was the new Founders Theatre, I could sort of see that, perhaps, but an underpass with Her Majesty the Queen, I'm not sure. But I wonder if we just use the Crown. Is the Crown reasonable? I'm not going to die on the ditch. Her Worship may want this, but I think the Crown would be an easier.
The Queen Elizabeth II Memorial Underpass.
Yes.
Okay, so are there any other significant questions?
Touche.
I actually liked it, Councillor Gallagher.
You like it?
I did like it because I think you're quite right. I mean, Her Majesty the Queen is actually the Queen of New Zealand.
You know, you want that.
No, well, I don't know. I'm just saying.
Oh, look, I'm relaxed and I do acknowledge her status.
I thought it was very good that you picked that up.
In future,
We can always refuse it.
Councillor
Yeah, just one question. From the Red Square, which is shown on
Is
page,
that in Moscow?
Red Square, that's
near the Kremlin.
yeah.
which is shown on page 19, the path, will that just go down to the path which runs parallel to the river and then onto the car park, or are we going to wander across country?
Yeah, look, it does Miranda down that slope there.
Yep.
And that's to ensure we get the right grades to allow for mobility and pedestrians that aren't, not able-bodied pedestrians to get down there.
Because there is a path which is not shown on the photograph. At the bottom of the photograph is a path which runs parallel to the river.
Yeah, look, that's what it connects into.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good call.
Right, any other questions on this? When are they starting it?
Yet to be finalised, but I believe it will be in the new calendar year. We're just confirming, NZTA are going to confirm start dates with Hamilton Gardens to try and miss any significant events that the Gardens may have. So trying to work around that at the same time.
All right, so Councillor Gallagher, are you moving the motion?
I'll move the motion, and I'm relaxed. It can be or the Crown. I'd put the Crown, but I'm not going to. I'm cool. I'll move it.
Whatever.
I'll move. No, it's quite nice. I think it has. I'll keep it as it is. I'll move the motion.
Your Worship, sorry, just on your last point about the timing, it does say in the report in late 2016 it's going to, that's what it implies it's going to start, but you're saying not until after summer? Because there's a lot of activities through to March at least there.
Look, that's what the initial plan was. I've then talked to them about the impact on pre-Christmas activity, and so they are looking to find, I suppose, the quietest period of this calendar year, or this financial year, and so they are now looking at starting, I don't want to say a month, but I know it's after Christmas.
Why don't they start well before so it's ready for Christmas?
Exactly.
It's in the same financial year.
Sure. So they haven't gone out to tender yet, and they're looking to do all that prior to Christmas now, so they can physically do the works.
We look forward to it.
Another 17 years.
Yeah, we look forward to it. All right, okay, if there's no other debate.
I just want to.
Yes.
I won't exercise the right of reply as the mover,
Right.
but I just want to commend all the staff team, and particularly the New Zealand Transport Agency. Councillor McPherson says it's taken a while, but at least we're here, and I think this is good. And I think, please, I'd like to convey our appreciation to the NZTA that we've actually landed this, and I think this is good.
Okay, thank you. All right, all those in favour of this, raise your hand. Any against? There's no against. No. Thank you very much. We look forward to it. Road stopping, Gibson Place, item 9, page 20.
Thank you. Just once again, if I could take the report as being, paper being read. But to summarise, the report seeks council resolution for the stopping and sale of 3 road areas at Gypsum Place and Old Farm Road. These actions are to assist Housing New Zealand's redevelopment of its residential housing in the Day Street area of the city. Housing New Zealand proposed the demolition of a number of its older style residential blocks and replacing those with present day accommodation units of varying sizes. I had an update from Housing New Zealand yesterday, and the information that they provided is as follows. So 4 of 19 buildings have been demolished to date, which has reduced the number of units on the greater site by 10. There are still 21 tenanted units on site, and as every remaining building has at least one tenant in it, further demolitions can only occur when the buildings become vacant. Housing New Zealand proposes to commence building the initial units in May 2017, with further construction staged as its concept plans for the area are developed. Present thinking suggests a yield of 71 dwellings in that block, ranging from 1-bedroom apartments, terraced housing, 3- and 4-bedroom duplexes, a 4-bedroom property, and a number of standalone residential lots. The road stopping that is the subject of this report is required to enable Housing New Zealand to work through its development intent. All costs associated with the stopping are being met by Housing New Zealand. Thank you.
Right, councillor Gallagher? Sorry, McPherson. Sorry.
It's better than being confused with Councillor Mallett.
Only just.
Yeah, well, true. Ken, am I to take it from what you've said that the Housing New Zealand wants the Jepson Place and the other bits of road stopped legally before the tenants, the existing remaining tenants, are actually moved out?
So they're looking to get certainty that we're going to be in a position to stop that road when they are ready to start their demolition works and things within that area.
And that they haven't put in a subdivision application yet, according to the report, is that?
No, that's correct, and they tell me that that is going to happen, the consents. Sorry, I had it somewhere. I'm sure it was next month, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what I think.
September,
yeah. And there's no existing concept plan, but they're going to develop one, you said just before.
So they have provided the plan that's attached to the report, showing sort of their concept at the present time. There's been some amendments to that since yesterday when they provided their update.
That's got it's hard to understand though, because it's got this blue and green shaded areas, and I'm not sure what they mean.
Okay, so so if we're looking at page 25.
Yep.
Yep. So there's a key. I know that the key wasn't good even in the copy that we got from them, but they indicate where the units sit in terms of in that particular concept, the 1-bedroom units, which are the grey colour towards Cassidy Street. Would you like me just to go through the different types?
Well, no, it's more the principle, because I know one of the things in the past that we've been concerned about with developments that come in with piecemeal applications, we've wanted to see the overall, what it's going to look like, the whole area, precinct's going to look like at the finish, because we've been sort of death by 1,000 cuts in terms of planning situations before, and you know, we're being asked to stop a road and help them get things started without knowing how it's going to end up looking, and that's a concern to me. That's why I'm asking this question, and I'm doubly extra concerned is that that road may be legally stopped and works going on while tenants are still living in there, from the sounds of it.
So Councillor, maybe I can provide some, because I know you've raised this before, and so we thought about this when we saw the report come through and we got clarity. We can provide for the sale and purchase with a condition on the consent being granted, which would include the plans, or vice versa. If you were going for a consent for you, the road stopping, you could hold a condition on consent. So it can be done that way. It's just about what conditions you put on it to enable your concern to be.
I mean, it seems like it's okay, but it's just, you know, you could leave some people in a difficult position, and your council could end up with something it didn't think it was going to end up with, unless it's all wrapped up in one package. What we're giving them, and what they're going to eventually construct and develop should be all known before the final ticks are given, I would have thought.
Yeah, I mean, look, and that would be the idea. I think in terms of what they're trying to do with the deal between Housing New Zealand and partners, it's chicken and egg, I guess, from their perspective. We're just trying to provide some support to them in that space. But again, it's what we can put in as a condition to ensure that the concerns you raise are finalised before the process would go through. So that can be done.
And that includes the road closing as part of that?
Quite correct, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
So along that line, because I have to be blunt here, I have absolutely no confidence whatsoever that they're going to be building in May next year. Because they were going to be building in May this year and May last year and the year before. Correctly, right? That would be a fair summary of it?
I haven't been involved in their previous proposal.
Well, he's saying yes, and that would probably be right. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, just so I'm clear here, are they going to, is that a road, that grey bit? Sorry, I have to say again, you know, if you want us to understand stuff and the copy isn't good enough, well, get one that is, because page 25, is that grey thing between the two modes, is that another road?
So
What is that?
So the area that runs through the centre of the site, from Cassidy Road through to is the road.
It's sort of like one of those little roads where it's just really access for your back of your property or whatever, is it?
It's a narrow road. They have the properties, by the looks of the drawings, are going to be facing to that road. Yes. So,
okay.
Yep.
So we still haven't had a plan for the entire place. They have changed the plan a few times. They have been going to demolish and build for some time. And now they're wanting us to stop the road in anticipation of the latest drawing, of which they haven't applied for subdivision consent, and they're not talking about building for another year. Is that a general summary of what this report is telling us?
That's right. I mean, the construction for
That's
May.
right.
But
That's right.
the road stopping areas couldn't be stopped if that road was providing access to any of the properties within the group.
I don't have a problem actually per se with the stopping the road at all, actually. What I have a problem with is timing and doing something, and 4 out of the 9, let me get this right, 4 out of 19 ring fence for demolishing have been demolished. 21, so I'm just a little bit unclear about the figures. How many dwellings are actually there right now?
I think it's 58
58?
total.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I don't know
Okay,
the total
of
number.
of that 58, 4 have been demolished?
Well, their comment to me yesterday was 4 of 19 have been demolished because they are they're not individual.
No, that's right, they're agree. Oh,
So-
yes. So there might be, are there 19 buildings of which some might be 2 or 3 dwellings within?
Or 4, up to 4, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And some of those 58, 21 of them are still tenanted and they're waiting. They're happy for those people to live over there in those conditions while they decide what they're going to do.
So 33 are sitting empty.
Well, they're probably not habitable, might be a better description, would it? Yeah, not habitable probably goes close.
I think the numbers not that I know the numbers of buildings that are there, but number of buildings could equal 4 tenancies.
Yeah.
One building could mean 4 tenants, up to 4 tenants.
When's the last time you went and had a look over there? Ken, when was the last time you went and had a look?
Yeah, well, I look at it when I drive past, and when I'm having to go somewhere over that area, I'll drive past and have a look. I mean, it's boarded up, it doesn't look the best, I acknowledge that.
No.
Just for
When
clarity,
was the last time you went there, General Manager, and had a look?
Actually, just the other week.
Good. And what did you think?
It's terrible, which is why I'm standing up,
correct.
because Ken isn't involved in that part of the deal
No,
around
no, I
housing.
know. I understand
Looking
that, but I'm just asking you, when did you go and have a look? Because I'm sure there's a number of councillors here who go and have a look. So I guess it might be a question to you then, Kelvin. What are we doing to kind of expedite the activity over there to get this going? I mean, road stopping, sure, I've got no problem with the road stopping and doing it at all.
So you're well aware of the meetings that we've had, we've been following up. Luke has been meeting on a regular basis with their land property people in terms of the development. They've met with us on at least half a dozen times since I've been here with different application
different ideas, yep, ideas
from everything
meetings.
from the current 70 dwellings upwards of 90 odd, and then back down to 58. They've had negotiations with Tainui around how that might work, and we've been supportive of whatever proposal they put forward to us. And what we're trying to do here, you know, in terms of the question, is how can we enable that to occur?
Oh, yeah,
This is
no.
part of that.
Get that
So
road
we've
stopping.
met with them whenever they've had a proposal, and we've been supportive of it.
Right. So, okay, so Luke, what's the latest proposal from your perspective?
Your Worship, the concept that's been included in Ken's report reflects the last set of investigations that have been presented to Council. So we've met with them on probably at least half a dozen occasions. In the time that I've been at Hamilton City Council, this site for redevelopment has come up almost every year, but this is the furthest it's come, and as of this morning I've been informed by the consultant working on this that they are lodging a consent for approximately 70 dwellings to replace all of those that are there at the moment. That's likely to come in September, maybe October, just depending on timing. So they're in terms of actually looking at bringing forward a resource consent to actually redevelop that site. This is a priority project for Housing New Zealand. It's been made very clear at the highest levels of that organisation, and they've personally come down to these meetings. The general manager of their asset development attended those, and I've got every confidence that there will be a change in the environment of this location.
Your Worship?
Yes,
So
Councillor.
if I look at the map, just so I've got this right on item, attachment one, we have the yellow triangle, then we have the red bits, which are ours, which are public council land, is that right? Yep. And those red bits, they want, right?
Yes.
Right, and as a proportion, what would that be, 20%, 15% of the totality of that triangle?
Yes, I guess so, yes.
So basically, we transfer that to them, and then we trigger the development. And I'm wanting to be helpful, because if this was a private developer who I didn't know much about, I would be very dubious, because what I would want is, I want to be helpful. I want to get a good urban outcome, but it seems to me that I'd want to actually sit round the table, and before we transfer the red bits, that proportion, we want to have a better idea of what the final development looks like, because I don't want to do anything that's going to facilitate appalling urban design, and of course we have no examples of that in Hamilton, do we? And let alone a design that could actually be a negative as against a positive to the neighbourhood, etc. Now, I don't want to at all frustrate the Housing Corporation. We want to achieve a good outcome. I'm just wondering if and help me, Luke, how far should we be going along the journey before we tick our box and say, yep, that's fine, we transfer this land across?
Look, my response to that question, Councillor Gallagher, would be that this is I support the resolution. If you look at attachment 3 to Ken's report, showing that concept, as I said, is the last one that's been communicated to us. That's a result of lots of discussions between technical staff and Housing New Zealand.
Okay.
So the rationale for closing the Jebson place and having that road through there is that the light blue shaded area also becomes land that's available for additional housing. So that doesn't show the full extent of what would be developed. So that those blue areas that are shaded, it's, look, and I agree, it's hard to read in the resolution as it's been printed out, but it's called new residential lots. So what you'll see in this scheme that Housing New Zealand will lodge is a mix of densities, but this is a genuine social housing, affordable housing project that Housing New Zealand are wanting to improve the condition of this estate, and the road stopping is really important to them.
In terms of our assisting urban renewal, right, and we pass this motion today, what checks and balances do you then have to ensure that we get, in the end, as against what's promised, a good outcome?
So I suppose that there's, just to be really clear, that to enable this development to happen and to get new social housing at this location for the community in need, there's two processes that have got to follow. There's a resource consent under the RMA, separate, hasn't been lodged yet. We've been working with them on the detail. To realise that resource consent, they need to close that road to enable that land to be redeveloped for housing. So we've got two processes that are working in train. Housing New Zealand need the certainty around the road closure that at least we can start the process. We can conclude the sale of the properties once the consent has been issued, but they need that certainty so they know that it can progress and lodge a resource consent.
So just on that then, the recommendation from staff, do you think you need an additional B in addition to B then to give that
Your Worship, I
additional certainty?
was going to suggest it as the extra point 4 in B.
Same. What were you going to suggest?
That where it reads subject to the three things that are there, and 4 being a subdivision consent application being applied for and approved.
Same.
Okay.
Exactly what I was going to do too. Yeah. Would that be an impediment if we said?
It's not an impediment that would work.
Okay, because that's our issue, isn't it? We're wanting to say, well, hurry up, get on with it. This here has been talked about for
a long time.
A long time. Probably back to 1999 when we were talking about the
I think it was the following year, Your
Was
Worship.
it 2000? It's like we are getting the electronic stuff in the chamber too, isn't it?
That was the 2001.
Yeah. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, it's always fine to be wise after the event, Your Worship, but picking up on Councillor Gallagher's point about the urban design, I mean, we've got urban design in the Maori development that's happening, and I think they're opening 3 houses later this week or next week.
That's right.
And so I pick up on Councillor Gallagher's point and say, yes, the extra point 4 is excellent, but it's almost a significant development in terms of urban design. What are they going to give us? Are they attempting to do something new from Housing Corporation's perspective? And I've seen drawings up on the design floor of new townhouses, and that is the sort of thing, and Councillor Gallagher noted those the other day, that is exactly the sort of thing that should raise the standard of whether it's social housing or not. So I'm just wondering if there's any other fishhook that could be applied that might give some signal to Housing Corp that we're expecting better.
Can you help, Luke?
Look, my own recommendation is I don't think that's necessary for this report. This report's about the disposal and the sale of the land. They are very committed to a high standard of urban design. They understand that. That's been made very clear from the council staff. They themselves, as an organisation, are very committed to that. They've got their own urban design protocol for their own internal projects, their own benchmarks that they have to meet before the Housing New Zealand board will sign off in terms of investment, etc. The types of projects that they're delivering in other parts of New Zealand at a design level are very high, at a very high standard. And that's been communicated to us in all the pre-application meetings that that's what they're seeking to achieve with this. They've engaged a very good architect. The concepts we're seeing so far, I have a high confidence in the quality of the design that will come through in the actual resource consent. But I think in terms of this report, I don't think it's necessary.
It's just, I think, with the leave the chair, what the Deputy Mayor is saying is, yeah, we just want to have, I think, we don't want to frustrate, we want to help. But we do want to have a degree of certainty that we're going to get a good design outcome.
A degree of comfort.
Yeah, so I think what they're saying is that Housing Corp have moved to a different style of delivering social housing right across New Zealand, which is a mixed model, isn't it? And different sized houses and more pepper potting. But are you saying that in all your discussions with them, which I'm sure will have been numerous, you haven't been presented with anything that wouldn't meet the sorts of things that Councillor Gallagher and the Deputy Mayor are talking about?
Not what I've seen today.
Okay. Yeah. All right, so are you happy with what's up there, Councillor McPherson?
Yes, that was the extra bit I had
Yeah,
proposed.
it's-
I'd be willing to
You're
move
happy
it.
with that, you guys down the end there?
Yes.
Because you've got to go through a process for road stopping, like public notification and all that, but they don't get it handed over until...
That's right. You know,
Yeah.
we wouldn't have the final bit of paper signed off until all the steps that were required from the planning section were sorted.
Yes, of course, they can apply for a subdivision consent though and hold it, can't they, for a long period of time and not build, eh?
Yeah, I think theoretically that's possible, but they've made it extremely clear to us
They'll
that
get on with it.
they want to get on with it, and they've been told by their board that they
Yeah.
have to get on with it.
Okay. All right, so...
We've just been talking over here, if I could help, just to make it really clear and tie them, because under that wording, you could do subdivision in part.
Say that again?
You could do subdivision consent in part for the area. So what we're suggesting is a subdivision consent application be applied for and approved by Hamilton City Council for the land owned by Housing New Zealand, bounded by Old Farm Road, HCC Street and Day Street.
That sounds good. That's the whole lot.
Can you get the word all in there?
The whole damn
Yes.
lot.
All the land.
I'll hand this. Thank you, Andrew. It was my colleague who
Did you
He's
do
used
that,
to dealing
Andrew?
with NZTA, so that's
Andrew
why.
Parsons, did you do that? Did you suggest that? This is the man from the Waters place.
Just one question.
Yes.
So once that consent is approved, that they still have 8 years to wait. They can hold on for 8 years, right?
Yes, they could technically, but what Luke's saying is that they're not in the business of applying without endeavour to build, because they're in the business of building. That's what Housing Corp do, so, yeah. But there is that risk, certainly. So that's good. I think that's exactly what we were wanting to see. So who's going to second that? Who was seconding the motion? Councillor McPherson moved it. Are you seconding it? Deputy Mayor seconding it.
Don't you just add it on to...
Oh, he's just changing that out. They're just changing that out. Same.
You need the word approved?
Yeah, I think it should be approved because there's sometimes the applications come in and you
And that
send
can be
them off for more
rejected.
conditions. And you want to wait, you want to get it a final one, not just the
And
start
then
of it.
we're not holding it back. It's approved, it's done, it's out of our hands.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it an approved subdivision resource consent?
Yeah, I think that probably should be that because it's certainly changing boundaries, isn't it?
Okay, Luke, are you okay about that?
Didn't we want all in there in case they did it?
Well, that is, that boundary does cover it all, Gary.
All the land owned? Yeah, just let's put it for all the land owned.
Oh, all is good. Yeah.
All right, is that okay? Yep, yes.
As a bush planner, I wouldn't limit to subdivision. They could go for a land use. So if you just leave it as resource consent, that covers everything
okay.
possible.
All right. This is good.
He's a bush water engineer as well.
Would save a lot of money if we used him instead of the other crowd over there.
You should hear his bush legal advice.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Any other questions on this report? No? Do you want us to speak to it?
Really briefly,
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah,
Yep.
I would like to say that it seemed rich, very rich to me for some months to hear the Minister of Social Development offer to send spare Aucklanders down our way, including to Hamilton City, and give them $5,000 to live where, when they have got at least 33 by last count spare houses in this area, and quite a few more over in Enderley as well. And they're trying to put the hard word on us to give them the road, stop the road and let them use that, when in actual fact that hasn't been the problem at all, ever, in this particular locality and probably in no other locality in the city. And I suspect that most councils around the place would be more than happy to do this sort of work if they would get off their chuffs and do the work they need to. And please, Minister, stop sending us Aucklanders when we haven't got anywhere to put them at the moment.
I understand none have come here, Councillor McPherson.
No, in fact, I heard that 2 lots of $5,000 had been spent in the entire country as of about 2 weeks ago.
Interesting, yeah.
We could get a couple of families in Councillor King's truck.
We could. In fact, that would be better condition than some of the houses over there.
Okay. I think I did talk to you, Deputy Mayor, didn't I, at the beginning of the meeting?
You did.
Yeah. He's feeling frisky because he only got 2 meetings left.
Councillor Mallett.
Thank you. I'm supportive of this, but I just get concerned when I hear, and it's generally Gordon and Martin who do it, who raise the issue of quality of subdivision, of housing, all sorts of stuff, and it really concerns me that they're falling into the trap of the perfect being the enemy of the good. These are people who need houses, and frequently the reason they can't get into houses is because the cost of housing has been driven up by all sorts of reasons, but one of the things that does drive up the cost of housing is urban design requirements that are put on houses the urban design requirements are put on by councils and their district plans that drive up the cost of housing. And you need to understand that that does put up the price of housing, which the sort of people you're trying to protect moves them out of the housing market. They can't get into it. So we've got to accept that, you know, lots of us have got parents who started off living in garages and no one batted an eyelid. And I'm not suggesting we should be having people living in garages now, but what I'm saying is we need to be careful that when we put our stamp of approval on a house, or we put our judgment on whether a house is good or crap, as Martin sometimes calls them, that we're probably in that situation, driving up the cost of a house and someone's missing out. So we just got to be very careful on that.
Councillor Gallagher.
I wasn't going to speak, and I don't, and this is really good, healthy discussion. I think we can look overseas in the Scandinavian countries, in the UK, of socially just societies where we have achieved, not in all cases, we certainly have achieved good social housing. I think there's tons of examples around the world of good social housing that don't blow the budget, and it's nice to think that Housing New Zealand will be innovative and caring, and I don't think, with respect, just because you circumstances in life have not been brilliant for you and you need social housing, or you're lower income people, you need to live in a shack. And I'm not being rude, and I do hear what Councillor Mallett says. I do accept that, you know, there are some issues of compromise and you want to certainly make sure people are in warm, dry homes. I get that, but I'm hopeful that even on a budget you can get good design.
Anyone else speaking? Yes, Councillor King.
I think that this discussion that's happened is the kettle calling the pot black. We keep the people of the city waiting for decades when we promise them we're going to do things like subdividing peacocks, 30 years, and yet we're here, the questioning and discussion has been us criticising central government through Housing New Zealand for keeping us waiting for a few years while they move their tenants out, gather themselves, demolish and get ready for a subdivision. This is their development, not ours. They have asked us for certainty by passing these roads over, And we know they do good development. Nobody around here would argue with that, or nobody has just suggested they don't do good development. So why are we adding in clauses that may frustrate them? They're in a position where they can just leave these houses boarded up for years if they want to. It's frustrating them, and it makes us feel important. We should be making it easy for central government through Housing New Zealand to provide housing, and we should be giving them, working in with them and making it as easy as possible. I'm going to vote with it because there's no point trying to reverse out of this, but come on guys, this is a government department. They're not the enemy. Let's work in with them.
Any other speakers? Okay, we're going to vote. All those in favour? Against? There's none against. Okay, thank you very much. Next report is the growth report, item 10. Yes, yeah, okay, all right, thank you.
Clearly not.
Before Calvin kicks off, I was actually hoping Councillor McPherson made a request for information on some social housing. I found it near on impossible to get detail out of mainly Housing New Zealand about social housing information. And so, whilst I don't know if anyone's got a copy of the manual piece here, it says supplementary information available on desks. There is no supplementary information because they've been quite difficult to extract that level of information. So, Councillor McPherson, with your leave, I'm going to continue to research that and bring that to a future council meeting. Apologies.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Thanks, councillors. Thank you, Your Worship. So the growth report, I'll take it as read. Just with a couple of quick comments. We're not Auckland. The issues that we're facing here in terms of what's happening here are not the same as the Auckland that have dominated the media. We've undertaken a stock take in the development of this report, and the stock take was done through taking actual subdivision consents and taking those consents and counting by hand all of the individual dwellings availability within those consents, and then having that ground truth with the infrastructure team in terms of what is available on the land to come up with the numbers that are within the report. So we've had a briefing on that. We've worked with you on that. This is now the formal report to you. I'm sure there's lots of debate and queries, so I'll hand over and take questions.
Thank you. Councillor Mallett.
Thank you. Kelvin, on page 29, paragraph 35.
Yep.
Paragraph 38, 6, beg your pardon. It looks to me, by doing the figures, there's about 2 people. Is it basically we're expecting about 2 people per dwelling?
Yeah, no, so it doesn't quite, the difference between the projections of growth and the projections of dwellings are apples and oranges. It's not a simple matter of going, we have 70 people a week times 50 weeks in a year times 10 years and divided by 2.7 or 2.4.
Yeah.
We actually take the growth projections of the medium stats,
yeah,
and then we use localised information about what dwelling numbers are, the numbers of dwellings per site available in the historic times and the cycle over time to develop that sophisticated model to come up with the numbers of dwellings that are required.
But
so that's why there's not a match.
Okay, if you take and maybe I'm just going to ask the same question again. This might be what's going to happen at the moment. Maybe if you take the population forecast, then you take the number of houses being built and you divide the two, you get a figure that's very close to 2.
Yes, so the general rule is around the 2.7.
So one of them must be wrong. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the variance, there is a variance, but the variance is within the model, and they're within right. So
that's roughly the
roughly
about
you're
2.5,
2.4.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. And the other one was
2.7.
2.7. 2.7.
Yep.
And you're on page 55 of 94. You've got it's called a simplified urban development process, and it has a red sort of a bracket which tells us what's council's role, and then you've got an overlapping blue or a grey bracket,
yep,
which is called the developer's role. Doesn't council play a role in all of those things? Like council is the regulator on the business consent, the regulator on the dwelling construction, Not on the dwelling style, okay, so that's one thing that's nothing to do with us.
So the point we're trying to point out there is councils, because this report is about the supply of land and the
Yep.
role council plays in that supply of land available for dwellings.
Yep.
So what we're saying is in the first three boxes, that's all council. When you get to the big blue arrow where it says land ready for development, the
Yep.
land is zoned, the infrastructure is in. From there on in, to enact any of those next phases, that is where the developer has to do that. The developer has to do the application for the consent. The application for
We are the
survey plan
regulator, though.
approval.
We
We are the
approve this.
regulator.
Yep, okay, and
But we only regulate on what the
yes,
applicant gives us.
but we set the rules and we set the laws
Yep.
and, yep, okay.
Correct.
And then
Which is why it's
we
crossed
make a
over.
determination whether or not the application fits the rules and laws and that
Correct.
stuff.
Yep.
But doesn't that also apply with building consent?
Yeah, yes, so that's why it connects with to the building consent.
Oh, okay, so
Yep.
building consent is considered
Yep.
me. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pascoe.
Yes, I've got some questions. And some of my questions respond to what I've been reading, which reading outside of this report. And so the questions may be from a different level than specifically referring to the report. The first question is it fair to say council dropped the ball in investing in infrastructure 6 years ago?
No, I don't think it's fair to say that. I think when you look at what was happening 6 years ago in terms of the parlous financial state of our finances, the decisions were prudent in terms of the time. And also when you look at not just the financial state, but also the growth rates we had at housing at the time, it was a prudent decision. Certainly the growth has only occurred in the years from 2015 through to now, so in the last 18 months. And the bottom line is we still have 3,400 and something numbers of dwellings available now. So you've got some, and that's only in the greenfield area, not with the infill. So it would be hard to suggest that there has been a lack of, and of course, there's been no drop in the ball. Infrastructure spending has continued. So for example, we've continued strategic planning work around the ICMMPs, the Integrated Catchment Management Plans for Otakauri. We've continued to invest in other citywide infrastructure to enable that intensification and work to happen.
So it's correct to say that if there was a reduced expenditure 6 years ago, it has not now created a serious, serious issues on the infrastructure for sections that developers now wish to develop.
Correct. So what we're saying is that there is 3,400 odd dwellings available, which has infrastructure provided to the vicinity to allow developers to do what they need to do to enable those 3,400 to be taken to market. I think what we point out in the report is that the constraint around what is at market is not land supply. The constraints are in other areas which council do not have the ability to control.
So bringing that 6 years forward to say the last 3 years, and perhaps Richard might be the best person to answer because you weren't here then, Kelvin, but is it fair to say that in the first iteration of the 10-year plan that was presented to council, I think around about November or December 2014, there were a number of projects needed, there were a number of projects in that 10-year plan for infrastructure, and it was being accelerated given the fact that we were seeing not only an improving market, but also we had the evidence from the 2013 census that gave us some projections around, you know, how much, how fast the city was growing population-wise.
Yes, yes, that was correct, and particularly we but continued the focus on the work we've done in Peacocks, land purchases and so forth, and Otakauri in terms of stormwater, ICMP work and so forth. So the 2015 10-year plan that we've just completed continued that focus, giving a higher rate of population growth response from a growth point of view. If you remember in that December meeting, there was a challenge about whether or not we could actually cut some of that out to manage our mainly our debt to revenue ratio. We went away and we came back as staff and recommended that we continued with the original portfolio of projects because we believe that was the best thing to meet the growth needs of the city.
Okay, so we didn't push back in, was it February 2015? Did we move some of them out, did we, or did we?
No.
We basically kept the same funding.
And then in the 30 June 2016 annual plan, which is variation of that second year, we put in some additional growth projects. There was 3 additional growth projects we put in, as well as we foreshadowed a further growth project for the next annual plan should certain environmental conditions, i.e. environmental, economic conditions, probably a better way of putting it, prevail. There's also a foreshadowed spend as well, which we're hoping to bring our report to council in September to address that aspect as well.
Okay. So it's been suggested that we are collecting, and I underline the word substantial, amounts of DCs from developers, and I also underline the word before, we have spent on the infrastructure. And I think the last time that staff reported back, and I think Richard may have done that, and I can't remember when, you came back with an amount, with an estimate of around about $2 million, which is what we had forward collected in DCs that we hadn't actually spent.
Yep, so I just want to make sure council are very much aware that the way that development contributions are collected, we have spent some capital, and then over the period of the 10-year plan, we have planned to spend some capital. And it's not about, and the way that growth works, it's about incremental demand that's been placed on the network. So it may not necessarily be, we might be in year 1 of the 10-year plan, it might not be in year 5 until there's cumulative demand that requires us to intervene and actually put in a solution. So there is always going to be a scenario whereby we collect development contributions ahead of when the infrastructure goes in. That's the nature of the development. Otherwise, what happens is we get in a position we can never go back and get that money off that property owner because the ship's already sailed. So we've got to get ahead of the curve because the development happens here and it takes a number of years for the subdivision to get away. And if you look at Peacocks, it's 30 years. If we waited, for that period of time, it's going to take a long time, and that means existing ratepayers have to carry the burden on the books. In terms of what's been happening in the last few years, we've been receiving that money faster because development's gone ahead faster, and that's entirely expected given the economy at the moment. But at the same time, we have brought forward, as staff will always do, capital projects to bring forward to achieve that. So you asked me at the Finance Committee last week what that number was. I still don't have that number, so I need to validate that for you, Councillor. But it's entirely expected, and we will continue to respond. They go hand in hand, growth and development contributions. The development contributions slow down. We consider we might delay an infrastructure project. If it speeds up, we might bring it forward, and we've been proven that we've done that, and that's entirely acceptable.
I think when it was $2 million, we debated whether the $2 million should be included in the financial statements as a liability, and I think it was referred at that time to the audit office, and they concluded that it wasn't a material amount.
No, they concluded it didn't meet the definition of a liability through the statement of concepts.
Was that okay?
Yep.
Okay. So has it, is it reasonable to assume that the 2 million might now be 5 or 10 or 20 million, or?
I'm not going to speculate on that.
So we should have that figure sometime, should we?
My goal, Councillor, is to bring it through to the next Finance Committee, and we can discuss it at that stage. But what we're seeing now is entirely expected, and I think what you're seeing from your staff is an entirely appropriate response to that by continually bringing forward. Like I mentioned, the annual plan, we brought forward 3 growth projects, and we foreshadowed one for the next annual plan. So we're constantly looking at this. It's the way we do business.
Okay. Now, there's some evidence in at the last finance meeting last week in terms of land that had been vested into the city, that's by the developers, that there were 2 streets that had recently, of residential land, that had been vested into the council, but the sections remained unsold. Do we have any information on that as to where those streets might be and whether or not?
Are you talking like the road that's been?
Yeah, the road and the footpaths and the lights and that have been vested as if the developer has finished the subdivision, and the developers vested it to the city, right, but the sections remain unsold.
Do you know about that? Does anyone know about that?
I mean, we can, once we know the street, we can go and have a look and see what, if it's moved to title, that would be the information we'd have. Okay. I mean, clearly it would have a subdivision consent to it.
I can bring an update. We'll bring an update together with that development contribution information for the Finance Committee, because it's sort of related to the finance report.
Well, in terms of my little investigation as Sherlock Holmes, I did drive around Cumberland Drive the other day. I didn't drive, somebody did drove me around Cumberland Drive. Yeah, thanks, Philip. And we saw Batten Place, which looked like one of those streets, which might have been completely finished. There's not a single sign there. There's no housing development on there. It looks like
But
it's,
is there like a road there?
it's a cul-de-sac and it runs off Cumberland Drive, yeah. And that may be one of them. I'm only guessing on that.
No, we looked into that at Batten Drive, but I mean, the easy thing to do would be to quickly Google realestate.com and see if there's any sections on Batten Drive.
Okay.
I've just done it. I can't see any popping up.
Okay, next question is, will the access to the $1 billion fund from central government be denied if Hamilton fails to meet the objectives of NPS? That is the 1293 dwellings per year, as in paragraph 39, over and above the 1,064 that we have in paragraph 38.
So no, we're already well placed for the NPS if that draft policy does come through. So we've got 5 years supply now under our current calculation, and with the NPS with the extra 20%, we've got 4 years. That's in greenfields alone. That doesn't count the 16 years we've got within the infill availability, and it doesn't count the further 7 years we'd add within the remainder of the 10-year plan. So the danger of us not meeting the NPS is not a real danger, and the $1 billion fund doesn't mention it as a criteria, but if anything, our positioning would be in favour for us to put that forward as an opportunity.
So of those 3,433 sections in the report that are listed as developer-ready land, do we know roughly how many of those sections are owned by the developers, by builders who have bought them, you know, as future contracts and/or future residents? You know, people who have actually bought the section and are now looking for a builder or holding on to the section with a view to building in future.
So for this report, we have got in the PX section around ownership. We can look at that level in terms of our top 10s, and we have got the maps that can show who owns what land and what's serviceable. We haven't for this report gone to that level of looking at specific ownership and whether it's by a builder or certificated. So we haven't done that for this report. But again, I'm not sure what that achieves. I mean, the question for the report was, have we got enough land and what's council's role on that land? And the answer is yes, we've got enough land. Yes, council's done its role. There are constraints to the supply of land outside of that.
Yeah, to some extent I'm responding to what I've read in the media about the fact that there are no sections available in Hamilton for sale, and I'm just trying to get some analysis, if it was readily available, trying to get some analysis as to whether or not there are sections available. And
so there's something like 27 on, 63 on realestate.com right now, and on Trade Me there was about 17. Some of them will be the same.
Yeah. That doesn't mean anything. Okay, so in terms of meeting the end.
But the question is not whether I'm trying to buy one. The question is whether there's one available. I'm still talking to council over here.
So in terms of the NPS and having to advance those 605 sections in years 2 and 3 and 4,204 in years 4 to 10, do we have to adjust our existing long-term plan infrastructure spend forward?
Sorry, can you just ask that again?
Yeah, okay. So
you're looking at the table on page 32.
Yeah, we made that prediction that we need to lift up the number of sections in order to comply with, the right percentage for the NPS.
Yes.
And my question is, do we have to go back and look at the current 10-year plan and move some of the infrastructure spend that we might have, and I'm using an example here, in year 8 we might have to move it into year 6 or year 5 in order to have the infrastructure in place so that we can meet those particular targets.
So I don't have the specifics. I looked at Andrew to that, but we are doing that now as we respond to the growth. I mean, that's the point we made before about bringing forward funding into Rotorua, for example, that we've brought this time. So we have that ability to do that. So
I think just to be clear, because it might have been unclear, you're talking about if you apply the plus 20% to Hamilton only, because the urban area is bigger than Hamilton, do we need to do anything more in the infrastructure investment sense? Is that was
not necessarily more, because we've been told that there is enough in, but we might have to bring it forward from year 8 to year 6 or
To
or
keep
year
that
5
20%
in order
buffer.
to meet those targets,
Ah,
yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
I
So, without knowing the specifics and having done that work,
But
but we have that ability as we've done now.
Yeah.
which
So
we've
the
done in
answer is we
response.
may have to do that in order to
We
advance.
may do, although our I mean, if you look at the numbers now under the NPS, we've got 4 years supply.
Yep.
So if you roll that out even under the, with the 4 years, and then you've still got another 7 with the current 10-year plan, we still meet those thresholds.
Yep.
So it will be about what you need to bring forward into the next 10-year plan about actually opening up another growth cell, and I think that's the big deciding step that's coming in terms of ensuring you're ahead of the cycle for the next growth cycle. So
It's part of the narrative behind why we approach peacocks and why we've recommended in the recommendation we focus on peacocks. It provides us with significant capacity over and above the not only the NPS stats median but the incremental capacity they require. The reason they want that capacity is they want the market to be flush to have an overall impact on price, which is probably a little bit naive, but that's what they're trying to achieve.
Yep, okay.
The other thing, though, that the Minister did say about the plus 20% was because, you know, you can do the theoretical formula, but it's practically what happens on the ground. And often people will say, well, I'm going to do this, but it doesn't pan out like that, or you can put 2 dwellings on that, but they only build 1. That was what the Minister said in the, when he was
the
interviewed
commercial feasibility
about the whole
aspect of it.
thing.
Yep.
He said that's why they, the people, Treasury or MB, wherever it was,
Yep.
decided, looking around the world, 20% kind of represented that that decision-making process.
Correct.
That I could have built 2 but only built 1
One.
because the market return was better or whatever.
That's right, and that was more appropriate to the Auckland market when they were looking
Yeah,
at
that's
higher density levels, and they were planning to have, say,
That's right.
12 or 16, and then they decided to only have 6 or 4.
That's
So, again, more directed at that level
Yeah.
where we don't have the issues of land and
Yeah, no, that's right.
Top-
'Cause in the
topography.
interview, he did say that. That's
Yes.
exactly right. They talked to all the examples were Auckland
Correct.
in that interview I saw when he
Yep.
talked about that. Yeah.
Okay, just focusing on Rotokauri and the fact that we've done the integrated catchment management plan now.
Can I just be clear on that? We haven't finalised the integrated catchment management plan. They're quite a comprehensive plan. We've received what would probably be called the preliminary draft plan, and we received that in the last few days. And ultimately, that needs to get peer reviewed, signed off by the regional council and so forth. So there's still some water to go under the bridge, excuse the pun, in terms of the finalisation of that document. But we do have some preliminary information.
Okay, well, so I should leave this question until we've got that information, I guess.
Well, you can ask the question.
Well,
I'll
yeah,
see if
the
I can
question
answer.
was, and given that we're targeting 363 sections and 1133 sections in years 2 to 10, is there a significant spend required by council to consent the 1493 sections? Because I suppose what's come out of the integrated catchment management plan is, you know, what the spend is. And some of that spend would be liability of the developers, but some of it might be ours.
Yeah, there will be a requirement to deliver some stormwater solutions to Rotokauri as being one of the main parts, and that could be significant given the nature. Everyone knows the nature of Rotokauri and its swampy nature.
But that would be true of any major growth
Any cell has costs, but stormwater is the big one for Rotokauri.
Yes, absolutely. So that will inform that to what level?
So just on that then, because we put additional funding in to, you know, do more work on those catchment management plans, because I remember Chris Allen saying it's a very complex thing, those ones, because of the slope of the land, the topography, and the fact it's swampy to start with,
Yes.
anyway. So are when are we going to know about that? Because Chris Allen, I remember Chris Allen saying when we were talking about Rotokauri that there could be some significant, once they finish the catchment management plans and know exactly what they got to do, that could be some significant investment needed. Is that?
And to be fair, we're planning to bring them back as soon as possible to council. It'll probably be tying quite nicely up with first cut indications for the annual plan.
Right.
And then probably, as Chris said at the last meeting when he was questioned on this, it's lining up perfectly for the next 10-year plan as well. I suggest there will be some significant numbers in there.
So could, I guess following on from that, could Rotokauri end up being, the sections there being too costly to deliver?
I can't answer that question at the moment.
Yeah,
I don't have enough information. It's just Calvin's right, every cell has its own dynamics, and the team at council, together with the developers, work extremely hard to find solutions to address some of those more negative aspects of those dynamics. I mean, for example, Peacocks, we know, whilst it's probably the most ready piece of land in the city to progress with, you know, putting a bridge in there, and there's various environmental concerns as well. It's not easy there either, but the team are working extremely hard to find ways of addressing those concerns, mitigating and getting on with it, and that's what our job is.
So just two more questions, sorry to hog the, but Chris Allen's mentioned a number of times about the just-in-time approach for council delivery of infrastructure. Does that work as and maybe Chris might be the best answer, but he's not here. Is that the best long-term strategy that works for both council and developers?
I don't think it's the strategy. How should I put this? It's not a long-term strategy. Yeah. It's the ability to open the growth cell first, and then once you've got the bulk infrastructure, and it's then keeping ahead in time with developers and keeping pace and communication with them in terms of their needs, and matching that with a number of contexts. For
the most part, it's working. For the most part, I think the one where it was just in time, and Chris acknowledged that, was the discussion and debate around the Rotorua Reservoir. He acknowledged that we're maybe pushing the envelope a little bit on just in time, but the most part, what it drives our team to do is work extremely close with the developers and requires our team to know the numbers extremely well, and that's why we continue bringing stuff forward. You'll see us reassess our demand figures and our supply figures and bring forward, like we have in the annual plan, we're going to bring a report forward in September to continually challenging our level of investment.
And remember, the flip side of that was if we were to invest not in time but well in advance, and then the growth cycle was slow, then the ratepayer carries the cost of that until such time we're able to then bring the DCs back. So
it's risk management.
Yeah. Okay, and the very last question, and thanks for answering those for me. Paragraph 68 indicates central government view that funding of the $1 billion fund may be for roading only.
No, so just to clarify that, we've talked to the people from EB that the funding has come from their roading budget, but the indication is it is for the bulk traditional infrastructure that we would put in. So roading. So it
could include pipes and so
absolutely,
forth.
Yes.
And not specifically that we might get turned down because we can't put up a roading deal.
No. So the draft criteria they've put out actually stipulates that it would be for the bulk strategic infrastructure such as wastewater, the three waters and roading, for example. The things that you need to unlock new cells.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Mallett.
Oh, thank you. Kelvin, to what degree are we portraying sort of a false sense of accuracy or precision when we can't deliver a third of our capital project on time anyway? I mean, that's not just in time, that's bloody no time.
But
never turns up.
Carryovers.
That's what they were called.
But then if you look at the supply...
In the days we talked with words that mean
something. But again, in terms of the supply we've got available now and planned for in the future, in terms of the issue around housing demand and house prices, the constraints don't sit in that area. So in terms of has the delay in the capital delivery affected this?
But all your future stuff, I mean, we're talking 2-3 years out, 4 to 10 years out. I mean, we all, I say we, us and our relationship with the developers, somewhere along the line, for nearly 2 decades, we have been consistently 30% behind on our capital projects.
But in terms of the major capital, to unlock a growth cell...
Yeah, but these are big things. These are real things.
Yeah, these are real things.
Can I just add into that? So they're not like they haven't been done, Councillor Mallett. Sorry, it's not like they haven't been done. There's been a delay in delivering them. They've always been delivered. It's not like one deferred project gets out here. So your question has an element of it. Well, your question's correct in that it may well delay bringing a growth project online, but it's delivered late, not never. So the impact has, so the impact
has good, been... neat. But hang on, we've got little columns in our 10-year plan for each year.
Yep.
And in those years we have a project and some money.
Yep.
And we all start off the year, that's going to get done this year. Hello, end of the year, 30% of it's not done.
Yep, it's usually started for the most part.
And some of those are last year's ones that were carried over as well.
Yeah, not for the major roads.
I've seen it happen.
The ring road's a good example of that one. I agree with that. The ring road's been there, and that's for 9 reasons and decisions that will be made around this table. But but it doesn't have that direct impact. This is basically saying, based on the infrastructure that's in the ground now, these dwellings are developer ready.
But I suppose the question is, though, that if one of those projects that is deferred and
So you're talking about,
if one of those projects is capital projects
Oh,
is deferred, and of course they're only deferred, you know, we're not the causer of the deferred third party, but at the time of assessing that and whether council accepts or rejects the staff's wish to defer it, perhaps in the future there should be some analysis provided about what impact that will have on the supply of developer-ready land. Because your question is, well, what impact is it having if we're deferring these things? Because we've never had that included in a report, and perhaps it should be, because, you know, based on these numbers, we're ahead of the game, but it could be that one of those projects is so significant in that process, it does impact, right?
It could be, but some of those
That's
projects
a
are
good
also
question.
upgrades to existing infrastructure
Yes,
and wouldn't
true.
open new land.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, it's, what is the project that is
Yes.
delayed? When is it delayed, for how long, and what impact does it have on new land?
Yeah.
And so if some of those are about just upgrading an existing infrastructure, that doesn't open new land.
No, I know that, but I'm just saying that it would be a useful
Yes,
thing to
I
add to the
agree.
report, right? Because it's, you know,
Yep.
just at this age and stage of the housing and economic cycle, it is a highly relevant matter.
Yeah, and to back that view, I mean, if there was infrastructure projects that were delayed, that it may curtail your infill, for example, so
Yeah.
understanding what that
Yes,
is, that's fair
infill.
enough. Yeah.
So, Councillor Gallagher, I've got you next.
Yes, just attachment 7, the national policy statement talks about the Hamilton urban area, and it relates to urban development capacity. The map's not particularly good.
No, the mirror map is
And
terrible.
I just want to get that, so I'm clear in my own head, that when the government talks, and it's the stats area, when the government talks about the Hamilton urban area, that's basically Taupo, Ngaruawākea, Ohaupo, Tikopai, that sort of, I think I've worked it out, and then it's not Tautapo, it's
Correct.
Cambridge, is that right?
Yeah, it's a terrible map. It's the one that they provide us. So you can see the darker bold around Hamilton City.
Yeah.
And then if you step out, there is the lighter bold that goes right around, but does not include Te Awamutu or Cambridge, but then picks up darker areas.
So it takes in,
No.
yeah, that's right, so I've
Yes.
worked it out, the Hakramatas is sort of, the Hakramatas and the Waipa River is one boundary, and then it flicks just south of Ohaupo.
Correct.
And then flicks up just, I think, around the edges of Ohaupo, and then, but includes Matangi, Tāpori, etc.
I think it would be easier if we redo this with
Could you-
a
it's
map
just
and
purely-
circulate it for people.
Okay, so what I'm trying to establish in my mind in terms of central government, when they talk of that we're an urban development area and they're talking about capacity.
Yep.
What is the thought, we know what we're doing within Hamilton city boundaries, what is the thought process relative to things like future-proof and district plans to the other bit of the so-called Hamilton urban area?
So for the NPS, those areas are largely, as they sit within the future proof, and Blair, you might want to jump in and just clarify how that sits, but they don't play a dominant role in the growth requirements under the NPS for which this boundary sits, and it would largely sit within the Hamilton City area. So even though the bound is wider.
See what I mean? They make a reference to the Hamilton urban area.
Yes.
And I'm just trying to get, see where I'm coming from here.
I agree with you.
I'm just trying to get, is there any expectation that currently Waipa, Waikato district councils, you know, that goes into their
Yes.
so-called patch, relative to the planning, and I'm thinking of, you know, Timahiri and Ohaupo, I think.
So can I respond to that, Councillor?
Yeah.
So primarily the MPS and the $1 billion fund is focused on the volume of housing in terms of getting as many houses as you can in with an affordability lens. So many houses as you can over a quicker period of time as possible with an affordability lens. The planning designations still prevail under the future-proof and individual district plans, and so in the areas that are covered by the Hamilton urban area are zoned rural for the most part, and therefore aren't necessarily going to meet the definition of big volumes and affordability. So When it comes to the $1 billion fund, we've had conversations with our counterparts in those areas. We've talked to them about it, and they're going away to look at what it means, but it may well mean that Waikato is part of the Auckland urban area for the areas that are growing for them, and it doesn't address any of the growth areas of the Waipa region.
Right, so really what you're saying is don't be unduly concerned about that term. The intent really is for the 99.9% of growth and capacity basically to be accommodated within the existing Hamilton city boundary as against the so-called Stats New Zealand Hamilton urban area.
Yes.
Yes.
Correct. The only other thing in terms of, and I've raised this before, in terms of our understanding around consumer trends, because, we talk about people looking for housing in Ngarawahia, Tiamutu, Cambridge, in terms of getting an idea of what's available. So we've had a big debate around what is our capacity and expected growth capacity. What understanding do we have in terms of Waikato and Waipa in the sections, etc., that they may be releasing, or and I'm thinking, obviously we've got Leamington as a growth area, and I accept that in category-wise, I don't know where they sit in cost and yes.
So Councillor, that's a matter that the Future Proof Strategy Update, which we're currently working through, is looking at.
Yeah.
That information's not immediately available right now. We're looking to have an updated draft ready by the end of the year. But certainly those areas, particularly the Tiamutu, the Cambridge, elements in that way, will continue to grow, but the major growth will be in the city.
And I raised this at the public workshop, and I'll raise it again, and I'll raise it later in the year. I just think it's really good as a planner, and from a council point of view, and the fact that people will buy according to a whole range of factors, so not particularly caring if it's the mayor, Julie Hardacre is the mayor, or Milchrist is the mayor. They don't care about the local authority area. They're going to, environment, cost of section, etc. So we're seeing trends that people might buy in Tiamutu because that's where they can afford. We're seeing people say buy in Cambridge because they like the town, they like the area, it's got good access along the expressway, etc., etc. So in terms of sort of a forward projection, right? I think that information, I would argue, is it's not critical, but I think it will be very, very helpful to inform us as to what housing and sections and developments are coming on stream, and having that information from our two colleague councils.
Yeah.
And that's coming your way with the report that Blair's mentioned.
Okay.
Just to add to that, the Future Proof councils have put a lot of focus on having one growth projections for the sub-region, not individual different growth projections, and that's a piece of work happening right now with a centralised, coordinated expert convening that process. So we have one version of the truth. And really what you're talking about is supply versus demand across the sub-region, and we've spent a lot of time and effort to get that right by the end of the year. So.
Thank you.
So I've got Deputy Mayor, then Councillor McPherson.
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. Look, I've got a couple of questions that really follow on from the question that Councillor Gallagher's asked. And that is that my understanding is there's some 1,500 hectares that the Mormon Church owns in the Temple View area. Now, I suppose what I would like to know is this land in Hamilton City Council? What percentage is in Waipa District Council? Temple View has always been problematic in terms of infrastructure. And so it sat out there almost on its own, hoping and praying for us to come along and wave the magic wand. But I'm just wondering if this new government fund, the $1 billion infrastructure fund, could that be considered in our pitch? Because it may well be a pitch between Hamilton City and Waipa for this big patch of housing, which I understand from a property guru in the city that this potentially is for affordable housing. So do you have any answers on quantity?
Right, do you know anything about this?
There's a lot of property gurus in the city. So I'm not sure if all of that land is actually still within the council. land. That'd be the first thing we need to find out. But my understanding is that part of the delay on doing anything at Temple View is actually undertaking an integrated catchment management plan to understand what the requirements would be. So,
do you know what's going on over there? Do you know how, whether that land's in our area or not?
Through you, Your Worship. The Temple View area is held in future urban. That's the zoning, has been that way for a while.
The land in our
land in
Temple
our
View,
area.
because remember Temple View goes over boundary.
It does, yeah. And in terms of the ownership of the land inside the Hamilton City Council
Yes.
boundary, I'll have to give you the exact number post this meeting, but it's probably around close to a third to 40% held by LDS within our own boundaries, and they have other land holdings
Right.
immediately adjacent to that, bordering.
But that's a farm, bordering it is a farm, an operative farm,
It's
right?
currently used for agricultural purposes, but
if I might, I mean,
Agricultural purposes is a farm, is it?
yeah. So, if I might, the answer to the question about could it be used as an opportunity for the $1 billion fund, the $1 billion fund's purpose is to try and speed up and increase yield of available housing. So, no, Temple View wouldn't fit in there because we would have to do that ICMP work that wouldn't give us immediate housing and increase yield at a timely time frame. Whereas Peacocks, for example, is designated as zone, we've got land owned, we're moving that way and gives us that yield and straight away. So the zoning and designations and all that sort of work is part of the criteria of assessment that sits within
Councillor
that.
McPherson is saying no, that's not right.
It's only partly right.
Mike?
It's only partly right because this council has been told by the infrastructure manager only a matter of 3-4 years ago that we couldn't permit any more subdivisions in Temple View because the infrastructure wasn't in place to receive it, pipe diameter and things like that. So if that, I don't know exactly how many sections, but I do know some of the smaller owners out there, not the LDS Church, were wanting to go ahead with sections, but were told, no, don't come to us until we've got that infrastructure work done. That would seem to be, I mean, they were otherwise able to do it, this council was told.
I thought we'd passed a resolution and funded a structure plan to be done for all of that area to fully, that was part of the district plan appeals, right?
Andrew's
Correct,
up.
Worship, there was,
Gonna be okay.
we had a number of appeals.
The meerkat is...
We had a number of appeals seeking a structure plan, which the council resolved to agree to that, and we're currently working on the scoping study of that in collaboration with the landowners and be moving into that structure planning phase next year.
And did you have something to add to that?
I absolutely endorse Luke's comments, and that scoping report for the structure plan will absolutely pick up the infrastructure matters Councillor McPherson raised and the ICMPs and put that all into a structure and a program.
Yeah.
So that's the intention going forward.
So I think the answer to your question, Deputy Mayor, is no. Wherever you heard that was not correct, and there's a lot of stuff to go through at the moment for a while, and also a good portion of that isn't even in Hamilton's boundary, but will be in that Hamilton urban area, I suppose.
Yes, it is.
I guess, Your Worship, I raised that because the question is it an opportunity? Is it an opportunity that the government hasn't kind of been aware when it selected its 7 areas? So that was really the question.
Yeah.
It could be a lost opportunity if we don't have a discussion potentially with Waipā.
Yeah, so that again, the assessment criteria they've put forward is about with the purpose of speeding yield and getting increases, and part of the assessment is land, has it had the studies, has it got the plans, has it got the zoning, has it got the designation, and so those things that, for example, like Peacocks that has got that, would be ahead of the curve as opposed to Temple View where we still have to do that work. That's
Yep,
so,
thank you.
yeah.
My last question relates to something that Councillor King said in this chamber a couple of weeks ago, which was there were no sections. And I think that Councillor Pascoe did ask around that. So I just want some real clarity. Was Councillor King correct in any way with that statement, or was he actually misleading his colleagues on that information?
No. The question is that right? Are there no sections or are there sections?
So what we, straight off the REINZ site, that's the level of data we've got, showed us at the briefing that we had with you the other day, 63 sections were available, 36 of which were all in one area, but others were scattered throughout the area. And just before I come to sit up here, because I guessed that question might be asked, I went and I've Googled those and they're still there. Now, whether you can buy them, how they're on there, but that's the information that we have that are available.
I did look into the 36, they're on the corner of Horsham Down and K Road, and they aren't titled at this stage. You can buy it right to buy the section, but you can't buy the section itself because they're not titled at this stage.
Can't buy a right. You can go
Well,
on a
they
list
sell-
to
they
go
s-
in a
they
lucky
sell 'em
draw
right.
to put in a tender at a later date for
Yeah,
half
that's
$1
right.
million
Yeah.
dollars
They're
each.
as good as
And it'll be
sold.
next year
Yeah.
before they come through.
Sorry, Councillor Green?
They're as good as sold, those sites.
Yeah, all
Yeah,
I'm saying
they will
is
be.
that, yeah, adding some definition to what the GM was saying.
But they are available and they're there.
Yeah.
Well, they've been sold, so they've been made available at some point.
Because what I understand happens is, and Karina probably knows a
It's
little bit
36
about
then.
this, is that often they're picked up before they get onto the market for mums and dads to buy, because builders, some spec builders buy up a few to build their houses.
So
So,
that's,
you know, so they
ex-
don't even get to the market.
that,
and
that's true.
becoming
That's what
more
we're
and more
hearing.
common.
That's what we're hearing from talking to developers, because you know we talk to developers as well. But the point is, there's still sections that could come to market. They're sitting there,
Yeah.
ready to go. There are sections that could be brought to market, and the constraints to why they come to market
Is
are
that
not
what
the
you're saying,
result of
Karina?
the
Karina,
lack
is that
of.
your, is
Yeah,
you're
there are
nodding?
sections that can come to market, but they haven't. And so people are just sitting and waiting. It's like this pressure cooker just sitting there.
That's right.
And they drip feed them, and they change the criteria of buying. So latest criteria now is open tender, one section each, and it's open to the public, but you have mums and dads competing with housing companies or investment companies who have deep pockets.
But are the developers doing that?
Yes.
Council certainly isn't.
No, absolutely not. Council isn't doing that, but that's the nature of the market at the moment.
Yes.
Did you have a question,
I have a
Councillor
question,
Wilson? Yeah.
but I guess,
And your mic, thanks.
sorry, I want to come back to one of the points.
Have I turned? Oh,
You're on, yep.
I'm switched on. One of the points I'd actually do agree with Councillor, I've lost his name already. King.
You're switched on.
Sorry. You would imagine with the amount of signs, I could never forget his name.
Now, look, guys, what I say, don't do that.
I was
I'm just,
It
humorous.
was a factual,
yes, good. Anyway, Carol.
I couldn't even
observation.
park my car today because there was this huge truck.
yeah, but people are living in it, Councillor Wilson.
You could have parked behind my car, there was plenty
It's
of
a
room.
truck park
Yeah,
now.
open the door.
All right, sorry.
Three of them in
Sorry.
there.
What I do want to say, and it's a question and I guess a comment, I do want to support Councillor King in one sense. Over the 14 years that I've been involved in local government, 12 sitting but over a 14-year period, peacocks has been a passionate issue for discussion. And what I do agree with Councillor King is council has played a role in its close relationship with the developers to the north, in how it manages the timing of how the land is released. And in some ways, we have been a very willing partner, and we have empowered people like Grasshopper and others in the day to make a copious amount of money by restricting things like peacock. And I remember when I first came in, I came in on a platform of trying to release peacock, and I kept being told, oh no, we couldn't do that in any shape or form because of the infrastructure. The pipes were too small. Then a few years later, somebody said, actually, we probably could if we create a pumping system where we pump some of the extra sewage and water at night when it's not being... So we have played a role in managing the time frame. So I think... I don't think it's fair to accuse Councillor King of misleading this chamber, because our hands aren't totally clean in this debate. This council, over a period of time, has empowered developers to position the property market to their advantage and to our ratepayers' disadvantage, in my opinion.
But Councillor King's statement was very clear. And also I agree with you on peacocks that made the same comments all the time I've been here. But we did allow the developers to release 1,000 sections And that was step one, and then there was step two to come and step three. This government $1 billion infrastructure fund is actually the answer to doing it in a very, very good area of the city.
Right,
And we've got to
okay.
exploit that.
Councillor McPherson, you had a question?
Yeah, more than one, Your Worship,
Right.
thanks. I've been
Okay, so
noting them
could I
down.
just say then, just before you start, because there are others, I'm sure, who've got lots of other questions as well. Dinner arrived about 25 minutes ago, and we will have to break for dinner. I don't want to hold you up, it's just that there's lots of other people I've got on the list who also have a lot of questions. Do you want to have your dinner now? Otherwise, I would suggest it'll be more like half to 3/4 of an hour before we have dinner, and then people...
I wasn't going to take that long.
Oh, okay.
But Dave, there's some delicious organic, dairy-free food waiting.
Right. Councillor McPherson, off you go.
Thank you, Councillor Chesterman, that's encouraging. Look, I want to just change tack a little bit here, though I would say, by way of introduction, whether there's 63 sections on sale at the moment or none, it's bugger all. And that's only at best 6% of what we need in a year. So it ain't going to go far, even if the whole lot of them are available to the public. And it doesn't matter whose fault it is, it's a problem for Hamilton. And I think we have to look at it like that. It's not blaming developers or the council, it's a problem for this community. Now, look, I have a problem with some of the underlying assumptions here. I'm looking right at the start, point 35, page 29, the population projections. It says, the very first line, 2016, 158,360 people is the projection that we're basing our calculations on. That only represents a 0.9% growth on last year. Now, the other statistics we've seen are showing our population is growing somewhere between 1.5 and 2% a year, maybe double the rate that's shown here. So I don't trust these figures that we're using right from the start. And I think if you look at, couple that with the problems in Auckland and the anecdotal evidence and maybe real evidence that if we could collect it, that people are looking south and moving south if they can, that our population growth is going to be far higher than this. I've been banging on about this for a while. This is only the medium projections, and that was before the Auckland housing crisis really manifested itself. So I'm asking you whether you really believe that these are accurate in terms of what's happening to Hamilton, Kelvin, whether staff believe that, not you personally.
No, understand. So we're standing by the numbers in terms of, we looked at this because of those very questions around are they accurate. And when you look back over the history, we've got better and better data, and we've gone to this line because that allows us to work within the NPS statements as well for 20%. So when we've added that and we've added the 20%, which picks up even that gap, that is within line between the medium and the high, and actually sits quite nicely even within the previous data we've used before. So we are confident that by looking at these things each on and given the supply base we've already got, so you talked about the 63 sections isn't very much in the market. It'd be bloody good if there was 3,400 of the market which are available. So to your point, how do we incentivise and get those to the market? And then do we have them available?
Are those figures that they're basing the needs analysis on, are they accurate? And I mean, our population right now is probably 160,000.
So no, look, I think the numbers are accurate. I think what you're asking is our assumption around this pace of growth, is that accurate, and will we be doing enough in the future? I think that's something that we need to be looking at annually. So that's a fair call.
The only figure that was accurate is you can be sure about is last year's figure, 156,800.
Sure.
Less than 1% growth on top of that is not realistic. It's much higher, and all the other things are saying that. So that's one problem.
But I think that the issue too is we don't actually know until they do the census, because these are all projections, models, etc. We won't know until the census happens in 2018, and that's why there's been a call to do the census more regularly, because people, in particular industries and sectors and local, are needing more accurate data, because all this is just modelled.
I think the problem in Hamilton and other growth areas, though, Your Worship, is that we could do the census annually and we'd probably still be behind the 8 ball because of the huge pressure that's coming out of Auckland and from our own growth as well now, and immigration, the
Yeah,
whole
but the
lot.
advantage of the census is it tells you what the natural birth rates are, because apparently we have quite a high natural one compared to other cities, what the migration figures are, where they're coming from, who lives here and works away, who lives somewhere else and works in, all that stuff, which is really valuable data, right? How many people per household?
Yeah.
All of those things that impact on this.
And we're only, this is only one metric. I mean, I take your point, right? The point is, are we increasing at the right rate and are we undercooking that? So that's a fair call, but we also look at, the building consent numbers, we see what's happening across a range of metrics to make that determination, and we can lift and go up and down. And we're actually in a fortunate position, we're in a good position, because we've got those extra 3,400 sitting there in greenfields, and we've got that extra 16 years in infill. So even if we've undercooked it, we've still got room, we've got plenty of headroom to then adjust and keep going.
Well, I want to go on to those green areas on your page 37 on your map there, the one that looks like it's a photograph from that new planet they discovered around the nearest star rather than anything close to Hamilton. But you get the picture. When you look at those green ones, the majority of them are right on or nearby the existing city boundaries. I think it's one thing to say within our area we've got the land, we've got the capacity for growth for the next 7 or 8 years, but we should be planning 30, 40 years ahead. And north of K Road there, east of the road to Gordonton Road, just north of where there's some development, the whole of Temple View out and Wallace Road area, there's a whole lot of areas like that, which doesn't seem to me we have a clear strategy for when they come to the city that's been updated recently. We did have one 10 years ago. That area north of K Road, where we're building right on the boundary at the moment, we should be having discussions with Waikato District about that coming in within the next 3 years so we can start planning.
So that is a resolution that was made from here for future proof to speed that up, and we've just started those conversations.
And the area east of the west of the expressway, and the sort of what's that area called? North of Ruakura development.
Yep. No, so exactly. So we've just started that, and we're also doing a review in the next 12 months of the current Hamilton urban growth strategy, and then the future-proof, the resolution from council was to speed that discussion around bringing those.
Wallace Road, where the owners are willing to potentially loan for the infrastructure themselves to get it off the ground.
So they can do that now through the
but that's in Waikato District now.
Oh, sorry, yes, right.
Yeah, that area.
Councillor, though, there is the WA land, which is in that Wallace Road area.
Yeah,
and
sorry.
The discussion that I've had with staff would be, as part of the structure plan process for Templeview, that area possibly could be considered there, because the WA land, there is no time frame restriction on that being developed apart from infrastructure, as opposed to the other two you talked about. The land to the north of Horsham Downs and the land in Ruakura, those are the timing ones where our council has passed a resolution to open discussions with Waikato around earlier coming to the city.
So are we not discussing with those Wallace Road landowners that came to us with the proposal that we formally ask Waikato District for that land to come into the city? I mean, why aren't we doing that? Because they talked about advancing the funds for the infrastructure at one point. That was it wasn't a legal offer, but it was something that they floated.
Currently,
I mean, it just seems there's some opportunities we're missing.
But
just near that.
We're doing that, though. We passed a resolution you were to commence negotiations on.
That's correct, and those conversations have just commenced, and we've had discussions this week on that, and we're going to pick that up.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Amanda Road is where there's another development within the city going on. It was a landlocked area that was hugely difficult for the developer to get through council at the time, but they did that, and there's more land all around the edges of the city that we... one of the problems is most of your developments in one area, and this was identified by the council previously, that means that that pushes section prices up because you haven't got many alternatives. And we need, Templeview area is a whole corner of the city where there's nothing much available at the moment. And to counterbalance the growth in other areas, it seems that we should be doing something.
Yeah, so look, I wouldn't disagree with you about it having the optionality across the city. And talking to developers and working with them on how they do their their calculation about what they release, and Councillor Green referred to this as well. If we had opened up another area, as we've said, that takes hundreds of millions of dollars, there's no guarantee that you'd actually get an increase in the amount released to the market, because the developers and the building work on what the market will assume to retain a certain price point. That's the same on any goods or service or a business. You hold a stock, you know what you release, they work on that same premise. So you'd have better optionality around the city, but you wouldn't necessarily have more release, because they've still got 8 years, they still know what their price point is.
But I mean, around Temple View itself, and Councillor Chesterman was quite right, there's quite a demand for land from Mormons who would like to live in that area, where they either grew up or their family live at the moment.
And not denying that, I don't disagree with you.
They're not going to want to live up in Rototuna
No.
if they could get a section down in the Temple View vicinity.
Yep. So again, the balance of that is, how do you, as a council, open up a growth area and then retain the cost of that over time if you've split your basically your collection of resources to pay that off over time.
Yeah,
then that's a decision around
doing some deals with the developers for them to advance fund.
And they can do that now under a PDA, so they can do that. And
but they can't if we don't have the plan that enables it.
Well, no, they can do that. They can do that now if the infrastructure plan is all in place and all those things. Correct. Yeah.
The last question I had, Your Worship, were related to, again on that map, when you look at the developer-ready residential land that's going to come on stream in years 2 to 3, it seems like quite a gap between what we have at the moment and what's going to come on stream in more or less in the second half of the 10-year plan. And in years 2 to 3, there's hardly any extra land becoming available. It seems like the pressure after this year might actually increase, and because there's quite a trough before we get back up to the red land.
To the 4 or 6.
Yeah,
yep.
I don't know
So I think, so again, given the amount of headroom we've got currently available in the green that now exists, that 3-4, plus the target of the infill, which is, conservatively, we've done the numbers at 40%, but we're targeting 50, that covers that orange piece, the smaller area in the orange before you get into the 4. So we're confident that we've got that headroom, and that's a rollout, given that you've still got plenty of capacity in the green. Again, it's the more you open up in timeframes and staging is
but only in the northeast, pretty much.
Yes, granted. Yep.
Okay,
one of the reasons we're promoting the $1 billion fund and the use of it peacocks, that does provide that balance in the city as well.
Yes, and it does open up to a whole development community which currently isn't developing somewhere else in the city. So you can get competition in that space.
All right, we're going to break for tea and we'll be back at 7 o'clock.